Welcome to NTD Newsroom. I'm Don Ma. President Trump holding high-stakes meetings today with both the Ukrainian and Israeli leaders. What was on their agenda and what did the president reveal about Senator Lindsey Graham's take on Iran? Newly declassified documents show Chinese influence in the 2020 elections, with the Chinese regime sought to exploit leading up to the presidential race. Dr. Anthony Fauci faces Senate questioning tomorrow after being subpoenaed by Senator Rand Paul. What lawmakers could ask about his private COVID-era diaries. A powerful earthquake strikes southern Japan, trapping people in a collapsed mall and triggering a major emergency response. Wildfires continue affecting over 250,000 people in Spain and France. Firefighters are bracing for the fourth heat wave this summer, which starts today. Apple is introducing a new way to lease its latest devices. How much customers could pay for an iPhone?
This is NTD Newsroom, live from our global headquarters in New York City.
Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us. President Trump has wrapped up White House meetings with the leaders of Ukraine and Israel. The talks come as the U.S. and Iran negotiate during a pause in strikes, while Ukraine is becoming increasingly tied to the wider Iran conflict. Joining us now live is White House correspondent Iris Tao. So, Iris, good afternoon. What is the latest?
Good afternoon to you as well. So President Trump earlier today wrapped up meetings with both Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy as well as Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. The White House press secretary now posting about these meetings, calling both of them, which both ran about an hour, calling both of them positive and productive. Now, the meeting between the president as well as Netanyahu was their first face-to-face meeting after the U.S. and Israel launched strikes against Iran. Meanwhile, at the meeting, reportedly, the Israeli prime minister would present President Trump with new intelligence showing how Iran is trying to expand their nuclear sites. But this morning, the president saying that the U.S., especially its Space Force, is completely aware of what's going on, especially at nuclear sites like Pixax Mountain. And also, he says that the U.S. is now pausing its strikes on Iran because Iran had requested it this time for negotiations to continue. Here's what he said yesterday. Watch.
Iran took a beating over the last 14 days, and they asked us very nicely, please stop. Let's meet. And that's what we are right now. See what happens. If we don't make a deal, we go back to the same thing.
Meanwhile, the president, of course, is saying that the U.S. is ready to resume strikes if there's no deal with Iran. It remains to be seen how this meeting with Netanyahu could shift Trump's policy direction toward one way or another at this critical juncture of deciding whether or not to continue with strikes against Iran. Meanwhile, the president, in an interview this morning with Fox, did acknowledge that some in the GOP do want the president to, quote, finish the job. But he's also noting concerns about Iran's civilian population, saying that if the U.S. actually goes ahead and destroy Iran's infrastructure like bridges and power plants, that could take a long time to rebuild. Here's the president talking about that delicate balance. Watch.
I think about 91 million people without power, without bridges, would have to live. And it's a very, very delicate balance. Yeah. So I think we have a very strong position right now. They know I'm going to do that if they don't make a deal. The bridges are going to be gone. Literally in less than, I would say in 2 hours, most of the bridges.
Meanwhile, the president also met with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy before meeting with Netanyahu, and Zelenskyy posting about that meeting afterwards, saying that he thanked President Trump for everything that he's doing to protect the lives of Ukrainians and also to advance peace, adding that they talked about licenses for Patriot interceptor production, as well as talking about diplomacy. Now, this visit also comes after Ukrainian forces hit an Iranian ship, as Ukraine has been accusing Iran of supplying attack drones to Russia. Now, both leaders are also expected at the funeral service this afternoon for the late Senator Lindsey Graham at the U.S. Capitol. President Trump has already arrived there as well. And as we know that Senator Graham was a very close ally to Ukraine while he was alive, actually just was in Ukraine literally 2 days ago before his sudden death. Now, President Trump today revealing in that Fox News interview that as much of a hawk as Senator Lindsey Graham might seem when it comes to war, President Trump says he actually told him that it's a good time to make a deal with Iran. Back to you.
Okay, Iris, thank you. Hundreds of lawmakers are gathering at the U.S. Capitol Rotunda earlier today to honor the late Senator Lindsey Graham. Vice President J.D. Vance, serving as the president of the Senate, delivered a tribute praising Graham's decades of public service.
He saw that the Senate, at its very worst, could be a venue for character assassination. But because he loved people, he saw that the Senate, at its very best, could be a deliberative body geared towards persuading people. And that's what Lindsey Graham did in that case and in so many others. So I choose to remember Lindsey Graham as a man who could disagree with you without being disagreeable. I choose to remember Lindsey Graham as a person who could fight with you on one issue, but fight for you on another issue. I remember Lindsey Graham as a man who loved people. And because he loved people, he was willing to reason with them, to respect them, and ultimately to persuade them. It was impossible not to like him. That swashbuckling, infectious laugh, that attitude, that passion that so many others have talked about, Lindsey Graham was impossible not to like as a human being and, of course, as a United States Senator.
Air Force bands performed as Graham's flag-draped casket lay in honor, recognizing his military service. Graham died suddenly from a heart ailment on July 11th at the age of 71. During his decades in Congress, he was a leading voice on national security and a strong supporter of Israel and Ukraine. Now attention turns to the Washington National Cathedral, where Graham's funeral is expected to begin shortly. President Trump is expected to deliver remarks with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy also expected to attend. Following today's ceremonies in Washington, Graham will be laid to rest tomorrow in his home state of South Carolina. And President Trump is asking the Supreme Court to allow key parts of its executive order tightening mail-in voting rules to take effect before the November midterm elections. NTD's Daniel Monahan has more on that and takeaways from the president's speech to auto workers in Michigan.
President Trump's March executive order aimed to tighten mail-in voting rules in 23 Democratic-led states and the District of Columbia, which challenged it in court.
Mail-in ballots are inherently corrupt, except for illness, disability, military deployment, or travel. If you're in the military, you're far away, absolutely. If you have to go someplace, absolutely.
In June, District Court Judge Indira Talwani ruled parts of the order exceeded the president's authority and blocked its enforcement in those jurisdictions. On July 25th, the U.S. Court of Appeals for the First Circuit upheld that decision, saying that if the order took effect before the September and November elections, it could sow confusion and threaten disenfranchisement of many eligible voters. The executive order directs the Secretary of Homeland Security to provide federal citizenship lists to state officials to help determine voter eligibility. It also directs the U.S. Postal Service to deliver mail ballots only to voters on those lists and calls for secure envelopes with unique barcodes for tracking. Federal funding could be withheld from states and localities that do not comply. President Trump addressing secure elections yesterday while speaking to auto workers at a General Motors facility outside of Detroit.
We will pass the Save America Act through the Senate, hopefully the Senate. Call your senators and put pressure on them. We won't get one Democrat senator to get you voter ID with photo. Need a photo.
The president mentioning the recent case in New Jersey, where over 6,000 illegal immigrants were registered to vote.
And that's all over the country. That's nothing compared to what's going on in California and Minnesota and so many other states.
Returning to President Trump's request to the Supreme Court, the administration argues the lower court's decision was premature and could delay election security measures before November. Solicitor General D. John Sauer is asking justices to lift the injunction while the legal challenge continues. The states challenging the order, led by California, have until August 3rd to respond to the administration's appeal. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
Washington and international leaders are honoring the late Senator Lindsey Graham today, with President Trump delivering remarks at his funeral, and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy also attending. Joining us now to discuss is Jeff Bloodworth, professor of American political history at Gannon University, and we have Jeff Couer, political analyst and host of Ringside Politics. So good afternoon to you both today. Professor Bloodworth, may I start with you today? So if you're looking back on Lindsey Graham's life and career, what would you say you remember him most for?
Well, I think I remember him most for in the early 2000s being a real Senate deal maker, rising from the House, becoming very close with John McCain. And he was one of those Republicans who broke with party orthodoxy on certain issues like immigration or climate change, and held fast to his kind of staunch internationalism, even challenging President Trump, and even I think having some real influence in the Trump era. So, Graham was able to, be a deal maker in a bipartisan Senate. And in a Trump era where hyperpartisanship became the norm, he was able to maintain that influence. And so I think that's, Graham is able to accommodate himself to kind of two very different eras in the Senate. And, that's no small legacy.
Yeah, and Jeff.
Establishment Republican type of belief, a muscular foreign policy, someone who believed in projecting military strength abroad, big advocate for military spending, big advocate for Ukraine and Israel, maybe the biggest advocates that they had in the Senate. Also, of course, his relationship with President Trump. I'll remember him for that. I mean, he had a tough relationship in the beginning. President Trump gave out his cell number at a rally and encouraged people to call him. And later they became very good friends. I mean, I don't know if President Trump has a better friend in Congress than Lindsey Graham. They were golf partners. They were certainly allies on issues such as the Save America Act. And I think Lindsey Graham brought President Trump over to issues that he saw more clearly, such as, involvement in Ukraine, involvement against Iran. So I do think he had a big influence on President Trump, and he's someone that, you're not going to have many senators or Congress members in the U.S. Capitol that pass away that get international leaders come in for their funeral. But that tells you about Lindsey Graham and who he was.
Yeah, that's right. And as we speak, we can see his casket being carried in through the cathedral. And he's actually one of the few very funny, I would say, politicians who could make a tense situation more lighthearted with his witty humor. Professor, would you be able to speak to us about his style, his approach to politics from what you could see?
Look, Senator Graham, he's South Carolinian, and to win in the South, you have to be able to have a folksy kind of down home style. And as you said, Graham did have a certain wit. I mean, famously, when he was a House member, he was one of the leading prosecutors in Clinton's impeachment trial. And, this was a grave moment of lots of gravity. And Graham was able to, have a witty aside in the middle of this and make people laugh. I mean, and so he was able to forge friendships on both sides of the aisle. So, this is a Senate where that used to be much more common, where, your legislative heft really depended upon your friendships. And I think we see today, I mean, that, as the other panelists said, we have two world leaders at this funeral. I mean, Lindsey Graham had real legislative heft that reached across the world. And, that begins with this ability to be a friend maker in the Senate. and to, have enemies, but do it with a smile and make people laugh. And, this is how he rose to power in South Carolina. And this is how he has a funeral in which you have world leaders really recognizing somebody who was a key player in forging America's international kind of commitments across the globe and bringing Trump to his side when it came to something like Ukraine.
And Mr. Cuero, what would you say is the reason why often you could see Lindsey Graham being able to get his colleagues from the other side of the aisle to work in a bipartisan manner with Republicans? Do you think it's because of his humor, his approach to politics? How was he able to do that?
Well, I think he's a friendly guy. He was someone who was not deeply partisan. I think he had Democrat friends. I think he reached across the aisle a lot. And this was his life. We've got to remember, Lindsey Graham didn't have a family. So he didn't leave the Senate to go home to kids or grandkids. He never married. He had obviously a sister who's now replacing him. But his life was this work. And, he would spend the time cultivating the relationships and meeting with world leaders and meeting with his colleagues and devoting the energy to try to work out deals. This is what motivated him 24/7 on the golf course, pitching President Trump on different things. He had a lot of energy, enthusiasm, and someone that had incredible influence. So, yeah, I think, his career was obviously very successful. Obviously, someone that's going to be remembered fondly, not only in South Carolina, but really across the world. A very unique senator who certainly made a name for himself. And I would mention maybe the one thing that stands out to me is what he did in the Kavanaugh hearings when he was forcefully advocating for Judge Kavanaugh and was able to really point out the absurdity of the attacks against Kavanaugh, sort of shamed some of his colleagues who were opposing him. And I think a case can be made that without Lindsey Graham's contributions, Judge Kavanaugh would have never been confirmed. So that was one of the roles he played on the Judiciary Committee, as well as chairman of the Budget Committee. And then, of course, all the foreign policy and national security issues that were near and dear to his heart.
And Professor Bloodworth, do you have any comments on Lindsey Graham's role in the confirmation of Justice Kavanaugh? Any comments there?
Well, I think the other panelist is correct in that, Lindsey Graham being able to, to point out what he saw as the other side's kind of absurdities in going after Justice Kavanaugh, supposed, foibles as a teenager. And Lindsey Graham, he had an ability to speak very frankly and to, make a really hard point, but also say it in a way that didn't permanently ruin and harm his bipartisan relationship. So he was an interesting figure in that he could be quite pointed and, take some very hard-edged views. Supporting Brett Kavanaugh was a, very partisan stance. It was a Republican versus Democratic vote for the most part. But at the same time, he was able to maintain this ability as a bipartisan deal maker in an era in which that was incredibly difficult. And, he had this really difficult balancing act to stay, on the good side of South Carolina Republicans, but also to maintain these bipartisan relationships. And, the Senate was his life. He's a throwback. Someone like Speaker Sam Rayburn, a Democrat, was similarly a bachelor and devoted their entire life to relationships and to their institution. And I think we saw that in the Kavanaugh hearings.
Jeff Cuero, could you also speak to us about how Senator Lindsey Graham was able to shape the Republican Party over the years, his influence, his impact to the party as we know it today?
Well, I think he is someone that ran for president, lost, so he didn't have that kind of popularity. But obviously he was popular in his home state, and he was able to forge a relationship with the president that influenced the Trump administration, number one, the Trump administration, number two. So that is a major contribution to have a senator that is that influential in an administration. And I think he did. He's one of the few that could bridge the gap between the new style of Republican is more like President Trump, America first, populist. The old style Republican, more like a George Bush, Dick Cheney type of an interventionalist. Lindsey Graham could sort of marry those two worlds together. It was really a unique ability. And you don't have many that could do that. They could run against President Trump, become friends with him, could bring one wing of the party together with the other. You're normally in one camp or the other. But he had that ability. It was his force of his personality. It was his energy. It was his enthusiasm. It was what he brought to it, which was, 24/7. This was his life. And it's an incredible. And the people that are at his funeral, there you see, Justice Kavanaugh right there, who wouldn't be in his position on the Supreme Court without Lindsey Graham, and these world leaders who may not be in a position that they're in now, like Netanyahu or Zelenskyy without Lindsey Graham. So that is quite a legacy, and he certainly is unique among the political figures today. Not many people could achieve what he's achieved, and to have that kind of success really is, as we said, a throwback to a previous generation of political leader, definitely.
Yeah, and Senator Graham being able to gather such a crowd of guests at his funeral. I mean, Professor Bloodworth, what do you think made him so influential in Washington?
So Senator Graham's ability to span two different eras. Look, he was a throwback. When being a Republican, quote unquote, neoconservative, was in the mainstream of the party, that fit him very well. And then when there was a shift in the Republican Party to a more Trump kind of MAGA America First perspective, I mean, Lindsey Graham didn't become a backbencher and become irrelevant. What he did was he was a professional politician. He became very good friends with Donald Trump, became very close, and he was able to deeply influence the Trump administration's policy, especially when it came to Ukraine, but also to NATO. I mean, I don't think 50 years from now we'll be talking about, what a Lindsey Graham Republican is in America in 2080. But, as a Republican senator, he was able to have a stamp on American foreign policy in two very different eras. And it's evidenced by this extraordinary turnout at his funeral. I mean, this is somebody who left a mark on his times.
And we see President Trump walking to the front of the church, just about to speak.
Thank you very much.
Let's listen to what President Trump has to say. Gentlemen, Jeff Couer and Jeff Bloodworth, let's leave the interview here. Thank you so much for both of you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Graham family. We love you all. Today we gather in the deepest gratitude and profoundest sorrow to honor a beloved friend, a devoted brother, a respected statesman, a giant of the United States Senate, and a true American original who left us much too soon. And that can only be the one and only Lindsey Graham. By the strength of his steadfast convictions, the force of his magnetic personality, and the goodness of his noble soul, Lindsey rose from a small town in rural South Carolina, a place he loved so much, to become a constant fixture of American politics at the highest level, and a force to be reckoned with all over the world. For more than 30 years, nothing of consequence happened in this Capitol without Lindsey Graham knowing about it. Nothing of significance happened anywhere in the world without Lindsey Graham having a view on it. And no bill became law in the most exceptional republic in human history without Lindsey Graham having a say in it. He was a man who gave America the full measure of his good and mighty heart, until that heart itself just gave out. But even though Lindsey's life was cut short while he was still so full of vim and vigor, there can be no doubt that he lived absolutely to the fullest. He died doing the work he was born to do. He was truly a great politician, serving the country he loved to serve so deeply. He went out at the peak of his career, at the top of his game, as a legend that every one of us, many of us here today, blessed to know him, and a friend that none of us will ever forget. There was truly nobody like Lindsey Graham. It was his hometown of Central South Carolina that Lindsey first learned the art of politics. His parents ran a bar and pool hall on Main Street with a room in the back where the family spent and slept and did everything that you had to do. As Lindsey said, his father taught him the key to being a successful bar owner is that you have to be funny enough that people will keep coming back, and that you have to be tough enough that you can stay in business and thrive. A very difficult combination. For his entire storied career, that's exactly who Lindsey Graham was. He was the first person to make you laugh, and one of the last people that you've really ever wanted to fight. These were the traits that made him into one of the great figures in Senate history. Few like him. As a boy, Lindsey also learned his first lessons in diplomacy when the wife of one regular patron called the bar asking for her husband. She demanded to know, where is he? The man instructed Lindsey, tell her I'm not here. And young Lindsey nodded and said into the phone to the wife, he said to tell you that he's not here. That was Lindsey. When Lindsey was just 20 years old, he lost his mom to cancer. 15 months later, he lost his dad. Their deaths left his 13-year-old sister, Darlene, an orphan. But in God's mercy, she had her wonderful brother to take care of her. On top of it all, Lindsey became her guardian while still in college and helped raise her. He later said that for all his achievements, and he had many, his single proudest accomplishment in life was how well Darlene turned out. He had total respect and love for Darlene. Nothing could be more fitting than that woman who was Lindsey's proudest legacy now continues his legacy of service in the U.S. Senate, a place that he cherished. And I have no doubt that he's looking down today, beaming with pride at his sister, Senator Darlene Graham. Thank you, Senator. Lindsey first stormed into Washington with the Republican Revolution of 1994, becoming the first Republican to win his House district in 120 years. That was Lindsey. In 2002, he ran for the Senate in what should have been a loss, and he swept to an easy victory. Lindsey quickly became a master at maneuvering in one of the world's great legislative bodies. He secured record funding for our military as a budget committee chairman. He delivered the largest investment in border security in history, and last year he shepherded the passage of the largest tax cuts in American history, the Great Big Beautiful Bill. Had a lot of Lindsey goodies in there too, I can tell you. And of course, he was also a great champion of the United States Supreme Court. His impassioned defense of a wonderful person, a great gentleman, Justice Kavanaugh, ended a disgraceful attack on this very good man and gave us one of the greatest moments the Senate has ever seen. It was a truly monumental moment in Senate history. I believe it was Lindsey's perhaps finest hour. But no matter how heated things got in Washington, virtually everyone, Republican or Democrat, liked Lindsey. Well, not everybody, but it sounds good. Not everybody. He was a tough cookie, okay? I have to veer from this for a second. He was a tough cookie, Darlene, but he was beautiful. But he was also ready with a joke and a gleam in his eye. After being lectured on the excruciating details of patent law by a fellow senator during a flight, Lindsey declared that he had discovered a new form of enhanced interrogation and torture for the Guantanamo Bay area. He said, this is really bad stuff and boring. And while he was an incredibly hard worker, he was not exactly an early riser, as many of you know. When Senator Tim Scott, a great gentleman in his own right, I can tell you, invited him to prayer breakfast at 8:30 a.m., Lindsey told him, Tim, if Jesus himself comes back before 10 a.m., I ain't going. Yet, while he was always quick to laugh, and no one ever doubted the gravity of his mission, above all, Lindsey Graham believed in a strong America. He wanted a strong America. He had unwavering faith in the righteousness of American power and prayer. And he was extremely hawkish. I will tell you, he never saw a war that he didn't like. Only his true friends would understand that, but he wanted it for the good of our country. He felt in his bones that our destiny is to win, and that his job was to do everything he could to ensure our enemies would lose. It was this conviction that led him to serve 33 years in uniform in the Air Force and Air Force Reserves and Air National Guard, even while he was in office. And it was this conviction that took him as a senator to almost every country on earth, confronting America's adversaries and standing up for America's friends. He had tremendous friendships all over the world. It's a testament to his towering impact that among those mourning him here today are leaders, presidents, prime ministers from all over the globe. They're sitting right here before you. Lindsey met countless world leaders, yet wherever he went, he was always the same Lindsey Graham. When he met Libyan dictator Muammar Gaddafi in a tent in the desert, he told him, I expected something out of the Arabian Nights. This looks more like a Winnebago. That was not a good statement to make at the time. And when he met the Dalai Lama, Lindsey looked him straight in the eyes and said, so, can you really levitate? The Dalai Lama was not happy with that. But no matter how high he rose, he never forgot where he came from. There's probably not a single town in South Carolina where Lindsey did not help repair a bridge, expand a school, improve a hospital, or recover from a disaster. He was a force of nature, and I will miss him greatly. As you remember, Lindsey and I did not exactly get off to the best of starts. Running against each other, back in 2016, Lindsey said something rather nasty on his flight to becoming the next president of the United States. So naturally, I did something that I shouldn't have done. I shared his personal cell phone number with the millions of people that happened to be watching that particular day as I made a speech, a very important speech. And I remember the number 202-228-0292 if anybody wants to give it a shot. His phone exploded. He said, I had that number for 20 years. His phone totally, I don't know what he did with it, but it exploded. That was the beginning of a friendship in a way. But it was Lindsey who had the last laugh, because while I blew up his phone for one day, we became great friends, and Lindsey did not stop calling me for the next 10 years. It was not easy. I always cherish the memories of our golf games, and only because of his really, and I will say, this memorial service, it's so hard to say. A memorial service for Lindsey, it's hard to say. But I'll admit that one time Lindsey Graham and Annika Sorensen actually beat me and Gary Player together. Can you believe that? Annika played very well that day, actually. But right to the end, Lindsey carried in his golf bag the putter that once belonged to his dad, and he carried it with him with class and with a ring that was so beautiful, of his mother, and they were laying right at his bedside. The night he died, they were there. He had him with him at all times. From that pool hall where his parents raised him to the halls of the United States Senate, where he was respected and loved, this son of South Carolina became one of the most important men in the most important country on earth. In a city where politicians often become jaded and cynical, Lindsey Graham never lost the old-fashioned American idealism that brought him to the highest levels of government and life. He took his duty seriously without taking himself too seriously. He was unwavering in his principles, but always willing to listen. He always wanted to listen. And one thing about Lindsey that we all know, he never quit. You wanted him to quit, you waited for him to quit, but he would never quit. Above all, Lindsey Graham loved America, and he believed in the American people. If you shared that view, you had a friend in Lindsey. If you didn't share it, there was no fiercer or more constant opponent. Our nation needs more men and women like that great person sitting, laying, wherever he may be. I think I know where he is, and I think he's up there. I think he's watching us. I'm pretty sure of it. Scripture tells us that blessed is the man who remains steadfast under trial, for when he has stood the test, he will receive the crown of life. For 71 years, Lindsey Graham was strong and steadfast. As a brother, a senator, a warrior, and a patriot, he withstood every last test, every single test that you can go through and every trial. And now he wears the crown of life in heaven, reunited with his parents and reunited with his Lord. I end by saying something very, very special. Lindsey, we love you. God bless you. We will always be with you, and you were very, very special. Thank you. Thank you very much.
And we are witnessing now Sean Hannity from Fox News as a host approaching the podium in front of the cathedral to give his eulogy to the late Senator Lindsey Graham.
I want to thank all of you for being here on behalf of Lindsey, Darlene, and his family that loved him so much. You know, many of you know that I speak for a living, and President Trump often reminds me that I kind of never stop talking, whether on air or off air. And while it is an honor to be standing in this place today, I simply wish that our dear friend Lindsey were here with us, as all of you do. He would have been so proud, he would have been so honored, Mr. President, that you were here, Mr. Vice President, that you were here. I see the Secretary of State is here, I see the entire cabinet is here. Thank you, all of you, each and every one of you. Chief of Staff is here, Steve Woodcoff is here, I see everybody. We are here to say goodbye, as the President said, to a true original. There was nobody like Lindsey Graham, nobody. He loved being a U.S. Senator. He loved representing the great state of South Carolina. He worked harder. He traveled more than any senator I ever knew. I couldn't believe his travel schedule. And he was just a force of nature in a good way, for good reasons. Nobody visited more war zones. Nobody met with more active duty troops. Nobody loved, with the exception perhaps of our president, our military more, and that included the decades of service that he served himself, both on active duty and in the reserves. To our nation's warriors, I have a message to you today. He was so grateful to all of you for putting your lives on the line for your country. Nobody admired you more. Now, I want to say for the record, Lindsey and I did not always agree, not on everything. But we could disagree and we could remain friends, and we remained friends for decades. We had similar backgrounds. This may shock some of you. We both, in different ways, we both grew up in a bar. You know, I started working at 12, washing dishes till 2, 3 in the morning, and I was a cook at 13. At 17, I was tending bar. Lindsey, as the president mentioned, and a bartender at 17, and his father, Darlene, you know, as you know, he ran a bar, he ran a liquor store, he ran a pool room. And it's amazing what life lessons you can learn in that environment. By the way, not all of them are really good lessons. I can tell you that. We did laugh about it constantly. We shared stories always. And yes, I shouldn't admit this in the National Cathedral, we could still curse like we were behind a bar. Lindsey does hold a couple of records that I don't think will ever be broken on the Fox News channel. And number one was how freely he would use certain words on my show in particular. Now in this beautiful cathedral, I will not repeat them, but his first record was on how many different occasions those words would come flying out of his mouth. That was record one. Record number two was how many times could he say it in a single appearance. I did show a montage on my show about this. And, you know, I will selfishly admit that when a U.S. Senator utters certain words on national TV, it is really, Mr. President, you'll appreciate this, it is great for ratings. And Senator Graham was great for ratings, because people listened to him. He drew you in. He had that passion to draw you in. So for that, I was very grateful. Lindsey also is well known on my TV show. He was a shameless self-promoter. I don't think any one person ever said lindseygraham.com more than Lindsey Graham. And then he'd call me hours later and tell me how much money he raised on my show that night. And over, if he were here today, I'm sure he would not miss a chance to say, darlenegraham.com. I'll say it for him. For the record, it was always a bit risky to have Lindsey on your TV show. my Fox colleagues, they would understand this. And I could have easily been fired for any of these occasions. And I'm extremely grateful to my boss, Lachlan Murdoch. He is with us today, and his father, Rupert, the founder of the Fox News channel. And they never held me accountable, Darlene, for what your brother said. And I'm about to finish my 30th year at Fox, in part because I got to interview wonderful leaders like your brother. Lindsey, I want everybody to know, was so proud to be a senator. He was so proud to serve the people of South Carolina. For the people of that great state, I want you to know with no ambiguity that you gave Lindsey Graham the honor of a lifetime. Thank you. At his core, Lindsey was a man driven by principle: God, family, country. He was a friend's friend. He was a great patriot. He fought with every ounce of strength he had in his body for the things that he deeply believed in. He's also, as my friend, one of the funniest people that you could ever know. We laughed nonstop. We laughed often about many of you in this room. With me, he never held back, and that was the basis of our deep friendship. I will miss him so much. Mr. President, he would be so honored that you are here today. He loved you as he loved his country. He loved the times you played golf. I heard about every single solitary hole. He loved the meals that you shared. He loved the late-night conversations you had. And Mr. President, you gave him the greatest gift of his life, and that was a front row seat at the highest levels of history in the making. It meant the world to him. Thank you, sir, for that. I see Prime Minister Netanyahu is here. Mr. Prime Minister, you too have been a dear friend of mine for 30 years. It's an honor to have you. And Lindsey would have been blown away that you took this long journey with your beautiful bride to be here today. He loved you. He loved the state of Israel. He loved the people of Israel. Under your leadership, Israel has been one of America's most consistent and loyal allies. He was never shy to say it, to the day he passed. And just as President Trump has been Israel's strongest friend in the history of the White House, you know, the two partners aligned together. Lindsey was that friend to Israel in the United States Senate, as long as I've known this man. Lindsey, he was often unfairly characterized as a warmonger. I've heard that false criticism a lot. It's not true. The truth was the opposite. Lindsey desperately wanted and talked to the president about a lasting peace in the Middle East. He wanted every region, every country in the region on that path to peace. That was Lindsey's dream, if people would only listen to what he had been saying. His greatest gift in life, from my perspective, was Lindsey had moral clarity. He understood right from wrong, good from evil. And he knew, as President Trump knows, as Israel knows, as I know, there can be no path to peace until evil is defeated. Evil, in this case, embodied in a death cult, an ideology, the world's #1 state sponsor of terror. Thanks to the partnership of the President, the Prime Minister, and many other allies, I pray their days are numbers, and I pray that Lindsey's dream of a lasting peace becomes realized soon. I see President Zelenskyy is here. President Zelenskyy, I know that Lindsey would have been deeply moved and honored that you made this long journey to be here today. God, our Father, called him home not long after he returned from yet another perilous trip to Kyiv to meet with you. In our private conversations, he often marveled at your strength against the world, one of the world's most brutal regimes. He saw you, and he said it to me once, as a warrior poet or a warrior comedian. He used those terms. And on paper, I think everybody would agree, on paper, Ukraine would have been defeated in months. And here we are nearly 5 years later, and your country has shown a fighting spirit that no one ever predicted. Now, he was proud of you and the courage of your countrymen. The President mentioned Justice Kavanaugh, who I see here with us today. Justice Kavanaugh, in an unfortunate way, you brought out the very best in Lindsey for the entire country to see. Now, he saw what was happening to you and your family as a grave injustice, and the world got to witness my friend, the person that I knew, in action, and they got to see him at his absolute best. He unloaded on those that were being unfair and brutal to your family and to you. And I believe it was his finest moment, as the President mentioned, as a U.S. Senator. And just as with Justice Thomas before him, and before you, and before Robert Bork before you, he had had enough. He'd had enough. He let the world know it. Thank you, Justice Kavanaugh, for being here. To the members of the Senate, led by Majority Leader Thune, Speaker of the House Mike Johnson, all the members of Congress present, you all know he loved his job. He lived it, he breathed it, and he left every single bit of energy he had on the field, fighting for what he believed in. In case you didn't know it, I'll say it for him. You were his second family. I see my friend Senator Tim Scott, my other dear South Carolina friend. I have one more that is here with me today that's really extra special. Okay. Senator Scott, Lindsey loved you. Your unwavering loyalty meant the world to him. Even before his last primary, when you came on my show the night before that primary and you advocated for him better than he could ever advocate for himself, it touched him deeply. He always knew and understood that you had much higher polling numbers than he did. He was never jealous, ever. He was proud of you, and you defined what it meant to be a man of character and a true friend. I see my friend Trey Gowdy, my fellow Fox host, is here, another dear and loyal friend. He loved playing golf with you. He loved when you made fun of him, which, by the way, was usually very justified. You were a confidant. You were a mentor in ways that people will never know. I see Governor McMaster is here. You were Lindsey's friends in life and an even greater friend after his passing. You understood the deep love that he had for South Carolina, and you recognized what it would mean to appoint his younger sister, Darlene, to finish the work of her big brother. That decision reflected the best of South Carolina values. Governor, thank you. Last and most important, my dear friend, Senator Darlene Graham. You know, I see that you're here with your beautiful husband, your family, all the people that love you, love Lindsey. And as you have said yourself, Lindsey was your brother, your father, and your mother. And you were only, as the president pointed out, you were only 13 years old when your parents passed away. And he was only 21 years old, and he left school, and he took over the family business. And he made it his business to raise his little sister. Politics was politics. Lindsey and I talked a lot of politics. But you, Darlene, you were his life. Your family was his life. You were his God-given purpose. He loved you with all of his heart, and he told me often. Now, we all know that he was a true believer. We know that he is in paradise today, and we know that he is so proud of you. We all know in this room today, this beautiful cathedral, that these past 2 weeks have been the hardest 2 weeks of your life. And most people could not imagine losing the brother that raised them. And then almost immediately, you got a call from the president of our country. You got a call from the governor of your state they asked you if you would be willing to step up and finish the work of the brother that we honor here today, your brother, Lindsey. You barely had time to warn, if any. You told me that you asked yourself the one question that mattered. What would Lindsey want me to do? That was the one question. You put your personal tragedy aside for the state that you love and for the country that you love. Within 2 days, you were sworn in as the first female senator from the great state of South Carolina. And by the weekend, you were in shorts and a t-shirt on your hands and knees with your daughter painting her parking space at her school. That was the week that your brother passed away. Now, to me, that tells us everything we need to know about you. Your brother loved you with all his heart. I would be negligent if I did not acknowledge Lindsey's staff. There's too many to mention. The hard work that went into this service today and the service that will be in Columbia tomorrow. His extraordinary Senate staff. I know how hard you all worked. Richard Perry, Van Cato, Tara, I know how hard you worked. Kevin, Taylor, there are so many others, too many to name. The fact that the vast majority of you are staying on to work for Darlene would have made him grateful beyond words. And on his behalf, I want to say thank you to all of you. Thank you. My Christian faith is the most important thing to me in my life. I like Lindsey, God, family, country. And I believe that with all my heart, we will see him again. To my dear friend, to our fearless warrior, I will miss our late-night calls. I will miss our strategizing together. I will miss our dinners. I will miss our conversations about the president and the country we both loved. I'll miss the gossip, I'll be honest. I'll miss talking about how to defeat evil in our time and how to find a path to peace so that peace may one day reign around the world. Many people ask me if I know at the end of my television show that I'm quoting scripture when I say the words, "Let not your heart be troubled." Well, I am. The answer is yes. John 14. Let not your heart be troubled. You believe in God, believe also in me. In my Father's house are many mansions. If it were not so, I would have told you. I go to prepare a place for you. And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again and receive you unto myself, that where I am, there ye may be also. Lindsey, Mr. President, I would argue in my mind, probably has a heavenly version of Mar-a-Lago. It may even be a little bigger. He may have a little more gold in the Oval Office in his mansion in heaven. And I wouldn't be surprised if he added one big, beautiful ballroom and an arch somewhere on the property, because he would want to obviously duplicate his dearest friend in life, you, Mr. President. Lindsey, my friend, goodbye for now. We will see you again. We will finish the work that you started. Well done, good and faithful servant. Enter thou into the joy of thy Lord. Godspeed, Lindsey Graham.
And you were just watching Fox News host Sean Hannity giving his tribute, very heartfelt, to the late Senator Lindsey Graham. They're saying they were great friends, and he was a true American original. And joking that he would often come on to his program, Sean Hannity's show, and he would say certain words, in fact, a record number of certain words on his show. And Sean didn't mind it, because he said, every time when a politician or whoever says these words, they would have more ratings go up on his TV show. And the final tribute will be delivered by Emily Boggs, Roberts, Graham's niece. So Roberts is expected to provide personal reflection on Graham's life from the family's perspective.
Unbelievable, faith-restoring, and deeply healing. In a sense, it feels like we have gotten additional time with Lindsey through all the stories that have been shared with us. I know Lindsey would be so thankful for the kindness that you have shown to his family. Lindsey was without a doubt a family man. His world revolved around my mother, his family, and those he considered such, like his lifelong friends, colleagues, staff, and the citizens of South Carolina. Lindsey was a very busy man. There is no question about that. However, when my mom called, he answered. It didn't matter if he was about to walk into a meeting with the president or another world leader. He would ask, "Is everything okay?" She would say yes, and he would ask, "Is everybody okay?" That was Lindsey, always worried about others. That is why he dedicated his life to being a civil servant. While writing this eulogy, I sat and I relived a lifetime of memories with Lindsey. I laughed, I cried, but mostly I immediately felt overwhelmed. There were so many moments filled with laughter, love, and immense joy that I found it so hard to pick the ones to share with you all. How to let the world see a glimpse of the Lindsey that his family knew and loved. From family vacations to holidays, proms, graduations, my sister's volleyball games, he was there for all of it. He even DJ'd a few songs at my husband and I's wedding. Not very well, but. For those of you who were ever unfortunate enough to go on vacation with Lindsey, I'm sorry. Lindsey never slowed down, and that applied to vacations as well. On Disney trips, we had to be the first ones, and we took the last bus out. I remember waiting for the resort bus thinking, finally. And Lindsey's behind me practicing his golf swing. Lindsey had to squeeze every second of joy out of those trips, see it all and do it all. I joke, but those trips really are some of my best, most authentic moments of him. And then there were the holidays, from Christmas shopping for the aunts to Easter egg hunts, which Lindsey made a sport of. He would jokingly, mostly, yell cheater when we would give my little sister hints on where to find the eggs. Lindsey may not have lived a life as long as we would have liked, but it was a fulfilled one. He made sure of that. As many of you know, my mother and Lindsey lost their parents when my mother was 12 and 13 years old and Lindsey was in college. Lindsey became brother, father, and mother to my mother overnight. It is a story that has been shared over and over. I grew up hearing that story, but it wasn't until a few years ago that I really processed what it meant. My mother said Lindsey would come home to visit every weekend from the University of South Carolina in Columbia while she was living with their aunt and uncle in Seneca. That is over a 2-hour trip, one way, every weekend as a young man in college. And that was only the beginning. Without a second thought, Lindsey made sure that he was there for his little sister, and he never stopped. Lindsey was always there for all of us. He held more than one role for each of us. He wasn't just an uncle, a brother, a nephew. He was the foundation of our family. In our family, when you needed advice, a problem solved, or a helping hand, you turned to Lindsey. But hopefully the help didn't involve cleaning or manual labor, because if so, you were out of luck. Lindsey was there the day I was born. He held my son in the hospital the day he was born. And I have no doubt that he would have been there and will still be there in spirit the day my second child is born. My husband and I shared with my mother that we were pregnant the evening of Lindsey's passing. The first thing she did was pick up the phone to call him to tell him the great news, just like I knew she would. She never got to tell him, but I have no doubt that he knows and is thrilled. Lindsey was always so supportive of me. That is just how he was. Fiercely supportive, fiercely protective. Unfortunately, over the years, I've had a long line of health issues, and Lindsey was there every step of the way. He was by my bedside with my mother for every major surgery. In 2011, after my first surgery, when my brain started to swell, I grabbed for Lindsey and said, "My head hurts," before losing consciousness. Most people probably would have been like, "Well, yeah, of course your head hurts. You just had brain surgery. Makes sense." But with my mom having stepped down the hall for a break, he jumped into action and immediately got the nurse, no doubt preventing a catastrophe and likely saving my life. However, as much as he did to save my life that day, he also put it in danger many a times with his driving. Those of you who did not have the privilege of riding with Lindsey Graham, consider yourself blessed. BMW must make one heck of a tank for a car, I'll say that. But in all seriousness, nothing was happening to me on his watch, and I believe that to my core. We all did. No matter the situation, with Lindsey around, at the end of the day, it would all be okay. To be loved by Lindsey was to be truly blessed. It is the circle of life that we must all return home to our Creator one day. But in my mind, Lindsey was invincible. He was so strong, confident, witty, and full of life. How lucky were all of us to have known Lindsey. He was a humble man from humble beginnings, and he never forgot that. He took care of people in need. He defended the defenseless. He put everyone above himself. He was the most selfless person I have ever known. As they say, he would have given someone the shirt off of his back. He was strong-willed, hardworking, and his loyalty was unwavering. You could always count on Lindsey. But most of all, Lindsey was a godly man. So while we grieve our loss here on earth, I find grace and comfort knowing that he has gone home to reunite with his mother and father that he lost far too young. So I count my many blessings to have known him and loved him, and I rejoice in his memory. Today we celebrate a life well lived, a life well loved. Thank you.
Please stand as you are able. The Lord be with you. Let us pray. O God, who by the glorious resurrection of your Son, Jesus Christ, destroyed death and brought life and immortality to light, grant that your servant Lindsey, being raised with him, may know the strength of his presence and rejoice in his eternal glory, who with you in the Holy Spirit lives and reigns one God forever and ever. Amen.
Most merciful God, whose wisdom is beyond our understanding, deal graciously with Lindsey's family and friends in their grief. Surround them with your love, that they may not be overwhelmed by their loss, but have confidence in your goodness and strength to meet the days to come. Through Jesus Christ, our Lord. Amen.
A reading from the prophet Isaiah foretelling the coming of the Anointed One. The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because the Lord has anointed me. He has sent me to bring good news to the oppressed, to bind up the brokenhearted, to proclaim liberty to the captives, and to release the prisoners, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor, and the day of vengeance of our God, to comfort all who mourn, to provide for those who mourn in Zion, to give them a garland instead of ashes, the oil of gladness instead of mourning, the mantle of praise instead of a faint spirit. They will be called oaks of righteousness, the planting of the Lord to display his glory. The word of the Lord.
Psalm 46. God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble. Therefore we will not fear, though the earth be moved, and though the mountains be toppled into the depths of the sea, though its waters rage and foam, and though the mountains tremble at its tumult. The Lord of hosts is with us. The God of Jacob is our stronghold. There's a river whose streams make glad the city of God, the holy habitation of the Most High. God is in the midst of her. She shall not be overthrown. God shall help her at the break of day. The nations make much ado, and the kingdoms are shaken. God has spoken, and the earth shall melt away. The Lord of hosts is with us. The God of Jacob is our stronghold. Come now and look upon the works of the Lord, whose awesome things he has done on earth. It is he who makes war to cease in all the world. He breaks the bow and shatters the spear and burns the shields with fire. Be still then and know that I am God. I will be exalted among the nations. I will be exalted in the earth. The Lord of hosts is with us. The God of Jacob is our stronghold.
Senator Darlene, Mr. President, many people don't want to talk about death because death means the end, a step into darkness. But for those that have been to the foot of the cross in repentance, believing in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ is not the end, it's the beginning of a brand new life, a beginning of eternity in the presence of Almighty God. I want to read a passage of Scripture that gives us a little glimpse as to what is coming for those that have put their faith and trust in Jesus Christ. A reading from the Revelation to St. John. I saw the holy city, the new Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband. And I heard a loud voice from the throne saying, "See, the home of God is among men. He will dwell with them as their God. They'll be his people, and God himself will be with them. He will wipe every tear from their eyes. Death will be no more. Mourning and crying and pain will be no more, for the first things have passed away." And the one who was seated on the throne said, "See, I'm making all things new." Also he said, "Write this, for these words are trustworthy and true." Then he said to me, "It is done. I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. To the thirsty, I will give water as a gift from the spring of the water of life. Those who conquer will inherit these things, and I will be their God, and they will be my children." The word of the Lord.
and you're just watching the funeral honoring the life of Lindsey Graham. And a number of speakers gave eulogies at the memorial service, including President Donald Trump, and just some highlights He delivered a deeply personal and often characterizing Lindsey Graham as a person who loved his country, portraying him as one of the most influential senators of his generation, and of course saying that he is a loyal friend to President Trump and a devoted patriot whose impact extended way beyond Washington. President Trump described Graham as a true American original, and his career spanned more than 30 years in government. And President Trump said Graham played essentially a role in virtually every major legislative and foreign policy debate during his time in Congress, talking about his dedication, his work, and saying that he loved what he did. Graham's upbringing was in a small town in South Carolina. President Trump says his parents operated a bar and a pool hall, and then after both parents died while Graham was in college, he became the father, the mother, the legal guardian of his younger sister, Darlene Graham. And Trump said Graham considered raising Darlene his greatest achievement, even above his political accomplishments.
Martha said to Jesus, "Lord, if you'd been here, my brother would not have died. But even now, I know that God will give you whatever you ask of him." Jesus said to her, "Your brother will rise again." Martha said to him, "I know that he will rise again in the resurrection on the last day." Jesus said to her, "I am the resurrection and the life. Those who believe in me, even though they die, will live. And everyone who lives and believes in me will never die. Do you believe this?" She said to him, "Yes, Lord. I believe that you are the Messiah, the Son of God, the one coming into the world." The Gospel of the Lord.
Amen. I believe. Do you believe? You know that story that we just heard there, there's a little bit more to it. You see, Martha's brother, Lazarus, he had been dead for 3 days. And it's always unique to me when I read that, how Martha puts Jesus in a box. And we just can't do that. For you see, when Jesus is 3 days late, he's still right on time. Good afternoon. My name is Tim Tate. I'm the pastor at Corinth Baptist Church in Seneca. I've been the pastor there for 15 years. And let me just say, President Trump, Vice President Vance, the very Reverend Hollerith, thank you so much for being here and affording me the opportunity to be here. Most of all, Senator Darlene, thank you. Thank you so much for allowing me to be here and be a part of this service today, this celebration. We've joined together today to celebrate, and I choose the word celebrate because I know where Senator Lindsey Graham is, because I know by his own profession of faith, he professed Jesus Christ as his Lord and as his Savior. So for that cause today, we celebrate. I had no idea 15 years ago when I became the pastor at Corinth Baptist Church that there was a U.S. senator that was a member of that church. But shortly thereafter, I come to know, and I remember the very first time I met Senator Graham. Now, I'm just going to tell you, I always call him Senator Graham. He was in the living room of his aunt. Some of you may know her and you've met her. She has gone on to be with the Lord, but Verna May, and Uncle Hollis. And I remember walking in, my wife Stacy and my son Weston, and we walked in, and I didn't know what to think because I had never met a senator before. And so I walked in, and there he was with a raggedy pair of khaki pants on, a raggedy sweatshirt. His hair was messed up, so he had a ball cap on. And I knew from that moment on, I liked this guy because he was like me. I love what we're doing here in Washington, D.C., and I think it's very fitting that we'll be celebrating tomorrow because Senator Graham was very Washington, if you know what I mean. But he was also very small town. When I think about being a pastor, it's such an honor. You know, he didn't get to come to church very often. And when he did come, he was quiet. He was quiet. Sometimes I would just look up and he would be there. And other times he would call and say, hey, I'm coming. And every now and then there was a time or two I hadn't seen him in a little while. And I'd say, are you coming? But I loved when he was there. And I don't know if I really preached good when he was there or not, but he always complimented me. And it really meant something. It was so encouraging. I tell Senator Graham and many people in our congregation, hey, if there's anything you ever need, let me know. You know, and sometimes I'm just being nice when I say that. Senator Graham called me and he says, listen, I got something I need for you to do. And I said, yes, sir, anything. He said, Verna May needs a Christmas tree in her living room. I said, well, is it in the attic or in the basement? He says, no, you have to go with her to buy it. And I'm like, Walmart or something like that. Well, she wanted a real Christmas tree. So we made it a tradition. I don't know for how many years Verna May and I, we went and we bought her a Christmas tree. And I normally got to put it up 2 times. The first time, and then when I would leave, and after she decorated it, Senator Graham would call me again and say, can you run back by there and put that tree back up? Because it had fallen over. Senator Graham was my friend. And I tried to be a friend to him. We would sit and talk sometimes in my office and sometimes in the living room. I wanted to be a safe place for him. I didn't want to ever go to him and want a favor or want something because so many wanted him and needed him, and he was always there for them. But I just wanted to be his pastor, and he afforded me the opportunity to do that. And so every time we were together, we would talk a little bit about fishing or hunting or golfing, which, by the way, I never got invited to go golfing. But we would talk a little bit about those things, but 2 things always came up. One of them was you, Darlene. And the other one was the United States of America. Because he loved this country. And he loved the people of this country. He loved the people of the great state of South Carolina. You know, I got a little fun memory. President Trump came to Pickens, South Carolina. Now, I don't know if you guys know this or not, but that doesn't happen very often. Some of you guys just heard Pickens for the first time in your life. All right? But he came, and my family, Stacy, my wife, and my son, Weston, we had been at the beach, and I wanted to meet President Trump, and I was, he called, and he says, do you think you are going to be back in town? And I said, we'll be there. We'll cut our vacation short. And so anyway, we come home, and it wasn't looking good, and he called, and he said, I don't know if we're going to be able to do this. And so he called me that afternoon, and he says, where are you at? I said, I'm at home. He says, can you be in Pickens in 7 minutes? And I live 15 minutes away. And I said, yes, sir, I can. Where should we come? And so he told us, and you know, I tell that to say this, and so many of you are going to agree with this. Senator Graham was a man who could make things happen. There's several different kinds of people in this world. There's people who sit around and wait to see what's going to happen. There's some people who, in a supportive way are a part of what's happening. There's some people who are wondering what just happened. And then there's people like Senator Lindsey Graham who make things happen. And listen, what a legacy he is leaving behind, this wonderful staff. I know he would be so proud because the past 2 weeks have been crazy busy, but you've made it happen. And that's so, Senator Lindsey Graham. And Darlene, you inspire me with your strength and with your will. And I believe that you're driven with a passion and a love, just like Senator Lindsey Graham, for this country, for the state of South Carolina. Oh, I have so many things that I think about. But you know, it's not what happens in our life that defines us, it's how we respond to it. And if we look back over the life of Senator Graham, we see many responses. There was no quit in him. There was no let up in him. He was full on, fighting hard, keeping on, keeping on. As I think about him, I think so many things. Him being a brother, a college graduate, the first in his family to ever go to college. So unlikely, but listen, he made it happen. Colonel in the Air Force, part of the National Guard, the Air Force National Guard, part of the JAG program there in the Air Force, 33 years, and devoted his life to this country. I say it over and over again. He loved America. But I think he loved me a little bit too. I remember on my 40th birthday, he wasn't able to come to my surprise party, but he surprised me with a video. Darlene, I think I've already told you this. I bet I have watched that video, I don't know how many times over the past couple of weeks. And you know, he tries to be a little cute in there about being 40, as you might expect him to do. But he wishes me a happy birthday. I will cherish that forever. I cherish the fact that I got to be his pastor. I cherish the fact that I got to be his friend. Darlene, family and friends and guests, let me read what the Apostle Paul says in Philippians chapter 3. It's one of my favorite passages of Scripture. Verse 12 of Philippians 3 says, "Not that I have already obtained this or am already perfect, but I press on to make it my own. Brothers, I do not consider that I have made it my own, but one thing I do, forgetting what lies behind and straining forward to what lies ahead." Verse 14, this is the part right here. "I press on toward the goal." And this defines Senator Lindsey Graham in my mind. He pressed on. There's a lot of times it's easy. It's easier to bow out. It's easier just to go a different way, the path of least resistance. But he stayed the course. He stayed the course even when it wasn't going to make him popular. He knew, as we've heard today, right from wrong. His moral compass was great. And if he believed it to be true, he was going to go for it. He was going to fight for it. He realized, and I learned from him, that sometimes being right will not make you popular. Now, there is a sadness here today, but it's not because there's a loss, because remember, when you lose something, you don't know where it's at. but we know where he's at today. But there's still a void here today. I appreciate what Brother Hannity said, and I'm going to expound upon that in John chapter 14 for just a moment because I want to share this with you, Darlene and family. So Jesus and the disciples have been doing ministry together, all right? They have been doing life together, ministry together, life together, and then Jesus, all of a sudden, not really, because he had been telling them, he says, I'm going away. And for the disciples, it rocked their world. What do you mean you're going away? Man, things are going good. For you see, they thought that Jesus was coming to set up shop and rule the land. But my friends, Jesus came first to rule our hearts. And he came and he says, I'm going away. Well, where are you going? How will we know? They were just in a panic. I would think there's been some panic over the past couple of weeks. Specifically that first couple of hours, that first evening, and just trying to wrap your mind around it. Darlene, we were on the phone that Sunday morning, and I was just like, what happened? I don't know. I mean, and still, right now, all of us, just it's hard to wrap our mind around this. But Jesus said this. He says, listen, let not your heart be troubled. Now, we talked about it's not what happens that defines us, but how we respond. So, Darlene and family and friends, I challenge all of us today to respond with confidence in the Word of God. If I say it, there's a maybe with it. But if God in His Word says it, I believe it, and that settles it for me, and I hope it does for you today. We need to respond with that confidence. He says, let not your heart be troubled. He goes on to say, I'm going to send another comforter. See, Jesus was a comforter. He says, I'm going to send another comforter, the Holy Spirit. And Darlene, I believe with all of my heart, as you have picked up in this race and you have stepped into this role of being a U.S. Senator, and as you think about the days ahead, the Holy Spirit is going to be a comforter to you. The Holy Spirit is going to be a helper to you. There's going to be people who's going to say, I don't see how you're doing it. I don't see how this is happening. Listen, with God, all things are possible. So I encourage that. Friends, family members, it's very easy to have this day and then go our separate ways. But there's going to be many, many days and weeks that now Senator Darlene, she's going to need you. And I challenge you to be there for her. I challenge you to give her that phone call. I challenge you to send her that text message or the staff and let her know, because listen, we go back to I've done this a long time, we go back to our lives. But there's still grieving to be done. So continue to be there for her. And then the last thing, and I'm going to finish, let me say this. It's not what happens to us that defines us. It's how we respond. Let us respond to Senator Graham's life and death with consideration for ourselves. For ourselves. I didn't see this coming. I don't think anybody did. As I think about the timeline, there's not much of one. It was so fast. My friends, not to be doom and gloom, but let us know that Senator Graham woke up on his last day the same as you and I woke up this morning, never knowing that he would breathe his last. It's risky business for us to live our life not being ready. As I Think about that. Hebrews chapter 9 tells us it is appointed to men once to die. We know that we're going to have this appointment with death. So Paul says in Romans chapter 3, verse 23, that we've all sinned. We've all sinned. Nobody is perfect. And I think Senator Graham knew this. And I've heard this testimony today, and I've seen it and heard it with my own ears. Yeah, you may not have liked him, and he may not have liked you, but he would work with you for the common good of this country. Nobody was perfect. Nobody had it all figured out. He realized this. But then Romans 6:23 says, for the wages of sin is death. Romans 10:13 says, but the gift of God is salvation.
And you were just watching South Carolina Pastor Tim Tate honoring the life of Senator Lindsey Graham, and he says he would always call him by Lindsey Graham, and he says the one thing for sure about Lindsey Graham is that he truly loved America. And, you know, unlike many senators, Lindsey Graham actually would regularly visit war zones such as Iraq and Afghanistan while serving as a reserve Air Force officer. And this was also mentioned during today's tributes eulogies, specifically by Sean Hannity earlier today. And he would often spend congressional recesses meeting with military commanders and troops. These visits reinforced his reputation of one of Congress's advocates for maintaining a military presence overseas. But let's take a quick break now. We have former President Biden's audio recordings with his ghostwriter being made public, and they're part of the Justice Department's classified documents case. We'll tell you what the audio tapes show after this break.
Are you sitting at home living in pain? Maybe it's in your hands, maybe your back or your hips. The good news is you don't need to live in pain. Why? Because there is Omega XL, a one-of-a-kind, natural, powerful joint relief supplement created from the green lip mussels of New Zealand. Drug-free, non-habit forming. It's small, easy to swallow, and it's backed by more than 40 years of clinical research. If you're experiencing daily aches and pains due to aging and overuse, try Omega XL. Just ask anybody who uses it. The results are undeniable.
I had a lot of joint pain, and that slowed me down.
I had considerable pain in my back.
Really felt the pain. I mean, in my ankles and in my heels.
I'm telling you about something that's gonna change your life. It has revived me.
This works.
I'm not a prisoner anymore to my pain.
As I was getting older, my joints started to feel that wear and tear. But then I tried Omega XL, and it changed my life. Today I'm here at my ranch exercising some of my polo ponies. So as you get older, it gets tougher. I was starting to suffer some of that business, and then I ran into somebody who said, look, you should try Omega XL. And look what it's done. I feel better than I felt in the last 30 years. And Omega XL gave me the ability to get back in the saddle. It works great. If you're in pain, I want you to know that there is real hope out there. I'm living proof. See the difference it can make in your life, just like it did in mine.
Call now or order online to receive our special TV offer. Buy one bottle of Omega XL and get a second free. Plus, we'll also include a free bottle of Vitamin XL D3. 2 free bottles for the price of 1 bottle of Omega XL. A total value of $115. You pay only $49.95 and it ships free. Plus, you get a money-back guarantee. Buy one, get 2 free. Call or go online right now.
Being a cowboy, I don't know anything different from when I was 3 or 4 years old. I did tough things. I thought everybody needed to do tough things, and if you didn't, I didn't have time for it. I had a very successful career at a very young age, and life was fast. I was preparing physically. I wasn't doing anything mentally on the inside. And then I got hurt. I wanted to be better as a person, and I really dug into mental health. I start my day with 20-minute workouts. I live life 8 seconds at a time. Horses are so therapeutic. They know what you're feeling. When you're nervous, they're nervous. You won't say it back, but we're pals. I take a lot of responsibility in taking care of my kids, my family, being there for them. You're gonna have tough days. Everybody does. Find a place to stop and just breathe. Love your mind.
Former President Biden's audio recordings with his ghostwriter are public now for the first time. They appear to show the former vice president keeping classified documents at home and struggling with memory loss. The recordings date from 2016 and 2017 when Biden and his ghostwriter Mark Zwanzer worked on his memoir in his home. The Department of Justice obtained the recordings during its 2023 investigation into Biden's handling of classified information, but they weren't released until this week. In two of the recordings, Biden could be heard saying he has some classified documents at home. In another recording, Biden seemed to have difficulty remembering things. One audio tape shows him struggling to recall the names of two economic advisors. In another tape, he struggled to recall a memorial he attended for a fallen service member. The Justice Department concluded its probe into Biden in 2024. It found that the former president had willfully retained classified materials, but the department chose not to pursue criminal charges, citing Biden's diminished mental faculties. Newly declassified documents show the Chinese regime sought to influence the 2020 presidential election. Acting Director of National Intelligence Bill Pulte releasing the files today. Declassified government records say that China tried to utilize cyber operations to sway public opinion against the Trump administration ahead of the 2020 elections. The operations were designed to exploit U.S. social fissures, especially racial tensions and partisan disagreements. The file goes on to say that the Chinese regime resorted to social media, including TikTok, Facebook, and Twitter, to project these tensions. Another declassified file is from the National Intelligence Council in January 2020. It reads, "We judge that U.S. adversaries, including at a minimum Russia, China, Iran, and North Korea, as well as non-state groups, have the capability to compromise U.S. election infrastructure for the 2020 presidential election." The release of these documents come amid President Trump's push for stricter election rules. The acting director of national intelligence also announcing today that he has cut 30% of the workforce of the intelligence community. He calls this the fifth and near final round of terminations. Pulte says, quote, "The intelligence community must protect the American people, not the political whims of the bloated and corrupt elite class." Meanwhile, Dr. Anthony Fauci is set to testify tomorrow before the Senate Homeland Security Committee. He was subpoenaed by Senator Rand Paul. This comes as Fauci's private COVID-era diaries continue to draw scrutiny. Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. says the diaries were found across 11 separate government servers, speaking on Fox News.
The worst part is that giddy narcissism that you see throughout the diary is juxtaposed against really bad public health decisions. So his focus was on self-promotion, clearly, and nobody can read these diaries and say this is a political response. His focus was on promoting himself, on getting on TV, and not doing public health.
Kennedy says the diaries reveal significant differences between Fauci's private assessments and his public statements on the origins of COVID-19 and pandemic policies. The documents have been turned over to Senators Rand Paul and Ron Johnson as part of their ongoing investigation into the government's COVID-19 response. Paul says any false statements made under oath during Wednesday's testimony would not be covered by Fauci's preemptive presidential pardon. The diaries also include references to meetings with high-profile actors and comedians. In one entry dated May 21st, 2020, Fauci wrote that he was the most famous and talked about person in the country and one of the most recognizable people in the world. Dr. Fauci has not responded to requests for comment. Here's President Trump on Fox News this morning commenting on Fauci and the COVID-19 response.
Had I taken his advice, the whole country would have been closed down, and much of the country was open because I didn't close it down. What I did do, though, is with Operation Warp Speed, is we got things done that nobody's ever seen in terms of all of the gear necessary, and we learned that the cupboards were bare. You know, when I took over, we had none of this. We didn't have the ventilators.
I know
we didn't have anything. We ended up becoming the #1 ventilator producer, and we were supplying ventilators to other countries by the time we we got going, and we did a great job. No, but I was not a believer because he said everybody has to wear a mask. Then he said don't wear a mask. You remember it was a whole thing. Wear them, don't wear them. I said, what are you doing? He started off saying don't wear them. Then he said wear them. Then he said don't wear them. And I lost a lot of respect for him during the period of time. Right. But I inherited him. He's been there since the 1980s. I mean, he was a guy that was there that I inherited. And with time, I didn't mind him. I didn't find him to be bad, personally as a person. But I didn't agree with what he was saying or what he was doing. And when Biden came in, he inherited him, and he gave him a tremendously high position. And then he gave him a pardon.
The Education Department is escalating its enforcement of parental rights policies in schools with new actions against districts in Maryland and Michigan, following earlier federal findings involving school districts in Kansas. NTD's Arlene Richards has the details.
The Trump administration is stepping up its fight with school districts over parental rights, announcing on Monday new federal action against districts in Maryland and Michigan.
And this is a travesty that parents are not considered first and foremost in charge of their children. They don't belong to the government. They belong to their children.
The Education Department says the districts failed to provide parents with information about their children's gender identity and classifying gender identity as confidential medical information. The policy is raising concerns about federal student privacy laws and parental rights.
This is really outrageous, and to hide it from parents and actually create separate file folders so that when parents ask to see their children's records, that is being kept from them, and it's being done on purpose. And so we're just not going to stand for it.
The move follows similar federal action in other states. In April, the Education Department announced that it had found 4 Kansas school districts had violated federal law. The department's findings in Kansas involved policies allowing schools to conceal from parents whether their children are using different pronouns, going by different names, or even having different names printed on their diplomas. Those districts were required to eliminate policies that were based on gender identity rather than biological sex and make records involving gender identity available to parents. McMahon said parents have the right to determine what their children's education exposure is going to be, and the Trump administration is going to enforce it. Arlene Richards, NTD News.
A photographer captured a harrowing and heroic rescue by a teenage lifeguard on a Southern California beach that he said was the most intense he'd ever witnessed. Here's what happened.
Watch a heroic teenage lifeguard rescue a 10-year-old swimmer from monster waves in Southern California. Video of the save was captured on a beach in Santa Cruz as huge waves battered the 16-year-old as he tried to bring in the boy. According to KSBW, several bystanders attempted to help, but were also batted back by the intense crashing surf. Eventually, another lifeguard assisted, and the swimmer was brought safely to the beach. The boy was evaluated by paramedics and released to his parents, according to the photographer who captured the stunning save. He said he hopes others will learn from it.
I've never seen a rescue this intense before. We want to see people come out, have a good time, enjoy the weather, but get home safely.
Safely on the beach is how and where a pilot made an unexpected landing in Huntington Beach, California. KCAL reports the small plane had just taken off when the pilot says things went sideways.
We were in the process of just talking with LA Approach, and then the engine quit, and I got out a call. I just called Mayday, Mayday, Mayday.
The local beach provided a soft and secure spot for the impromptu landing, which eyewitnesses described as perfect. Finally, a happy ending to a dire situation near Hawaii, where KGMB reports a California man was rescued after being stuck adrift at sea for a month. The man was attempting a solo trip across the Pacific when his boat's mast snapped and he ran out of gas. He said he drifted for weeks, surviving on oatmeal and fish until he was spotted by a passing ship's crew who brought him aboard and gave him clothes, food, and a ride back to land.
Apple is introducing a new way to lease its latest devices. How much customers could pay for an iPhone after this break.
Discover the ancient secret to vitality and longevity with Pulte Black Ginseng. Crafted from premium 6-year-old Korean ginseng, each root is carefully nurtured for over 2,260 days, undergoing a traditional 9-round handcrafted process of steaming and drying to unlock full potency and absorption. Experience pure, natural energy with Puretang Black Ginseng. Order now at puretang.com.
Introducing the QuestWise Soothing Herbal Eye Patches. It comes with 30 pairs and can be used to help combat tired and strained eyes. The natural herbal formula provides a cooling, minty, and refreshing effect that stimulates natural tears and awakens your tired eyes. Placing the eye patches around your eyes helps to reduce dryness and massages acupuncture points. They can be worn while reading, studying, using electronics, and provide hours of long-lasting relief.
Appliances break down, home systems fail, which means I show up at every one store because I'm inevitable.
Unfortunately, something expensive is about to happen.
Is it the heat, plumbing, electrical, wiring, garage door, oven?
But we already have homeowners insurance.
Actually, home insurance is for the unexpected disasters. A home warranty is for the everyday wear and tear that will cause your home systems and appliances to fail. So give the people at First American a call.
First American has had my back for years. It saved me hundreds. Just one call, and they send a pre-screened, qualified contractor.
Every home system and appliance fails. There's absolutely no avoiding it. But when the day comes, First American has you covered.
Home breakdowns are inevitable, but the expense, that's optional.
Call First American for a free quote that could save you thousands on inevitable home breakdowns. Call 800-423-1231 or visit FAHW.com.
Adopting you was the best decision in our life. And I am so proud to call you my son.
Welcome to NTD Newsroom. I'm Don Ma. President Trump holding high-stakes meetings today with both the Ukrainian and Israeli leaders. What's on the agenda, and what did the president reveal about Senator Lindsey Graham's take on Iran? The nation's capital remembering the late Senator Lindsey Graham today, President Trump and other officials honoring his legacy of humor and bipartisanship. Dr. Anthony Fauci faces Senate questioning tomorrow after being subpoenaed by Senator Rand Paul. What lawmakers could ask about his private COVID-era diaries. Former President Biden's audio recordings with his ghostwriter are made public. They're part of the Justice Department's classified documents case, what the audio tapes show. Wildfires continue affecting over 250,000 people in Spain and France. Firefighters are bracing for the fourth heat wave this summer, which starts today. Apple is introducing a new way to lease its latest devices, how much customers could pay for an iPhone.
This is NTD Newsroom, live from our global headquarters in New York City.
Thank you for joining us. President Trump has wrapped up White House meetings with the leaders of Ukraine and Israel. The talks come as the U.S. and Iran negotiate during a pause in strikes, while Ukraine is becoming increasingly tied to the wider Iran conflict. NTD's White House correspondent Iris Tao with more at the North Lawn of details.
So President Trump earlier today wrapped up meetings with both Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy as well as Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. The White House press secretary now posting about these meetings, calling both of them, which both ran about an hour, calling both of them positive and productive. Now, the meeting between the president as well as Netanyahu was their first face-to-face meeting after the U.S. and Israel launched strikes against Iran. Meanwhile, at the meeting, reportedly, the Israeli Prime Minister would present President Trump with new intelligence showing how Iran is trying to expand their nuclear sites. But this morning, the president saying that the U.S., especially its Space Force, is completely aware of what's going on, especially at nuclear sites like Pixax Mountain. And also, he says that the U.S. is now pausing its strikes on Iran because Iran had requested it this time for negotiations to continue. Here's what he said yesterday. Watch.
Well, Iran took a beating over the last 14 days, and they asked us very nicely, please stop. Let's meet. And that's what we are right now. See what happens. If we don't make a deal, we go back to the same thing.
Meanwhile, the president, of course, is saying that the U.S. is ready to resume strikes if there's no deal with Iran. It remains to be seen how this meeting with Netanyahu could shift Trump's policy direction toward one way or another at this critical juncture of deciding whether or not to continue with strikes against Iran. Meanwhile, the president, in an interview this morning with Fox, did acknowledge that some in the GOP do want the president to, quote, finish the job. But he's also noting concerns about Iran's civilian population, saying that if the U.S. actually goes ahead and destroy Iran's infrastructure like bridges and power plants, that could take a long time to rebuild. Here's the president talking about that delicate balance. Watch.
I think about 91 million people without power, without bridges, would have to live. And it's a very, very delicate balance. Yeah. So I think we have a very strong position right now. They know I'm going to do that if they don't make a deal. The bridges are going to be gone. Literally in less than, I would say in 2 hours, most of the bridges.
Meanwhile, the president also met with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy before meeting with Netanyahu, and Zelenskyy posting about that meeting afterwards, saying that he thanked President Trump for everything that he's doing to protect the lives of Ukrainians and also to advance peace, adding that they talked about licenses for Patriot interceptor production, as well as talking about diplomacy. Now, this visit also comes after Ukrainian forces hit an Iranian ship, as Ukraine has been accusing Iran of supplying attack drones to Russia. Now, both leaders are also expected at the funeral service this afternoon for the late Senator Lindsey Graham at the U.S. Capitol. President Trump has already arrived there as well. And as we know that Senator Graham was a very close ally to Ukraine while he was alive, actually just was in Ukraine literally 2 days ago before his sudden death. Back to you.
Okay, Iris, thank you. U.S. Central Command has announced an agreement with the United Arab Emirates to develop artificial intelligence for military use. A bilateral task force will work on the initiative. CENTCOM said Task Force Talon Synapse will officially launch in the coming weeks. The Abu Dhabi-based team will consist of American and Emirati personnel with expertise in AI, data, and cybersecurity. CENTCOM Commander Admiral Brad Cooper called the initiative a historic milestone. The announcement comes after CENTCOM personnel met with AI industry leaders and Emirati defense officials during a trip to the region last month. The task force will focus on integrating AI applications for intelligence, protecting critical infrastructure, and monitoring regional security. President Trump is asking the Supreme Court to allow key parts of his executive order tightening mail-in voting rules to take effect before the November midterm elections. NTD's Daniel Monahan has more on that, plus takeaways from the president's speech to auto workers in Michigan.
President Trump's March executive order aimed to tighten mail-in voting rules in 23 Democratic-led states and the District of Columbia, which challenged it in court.
Mail-in ballots are inherently corrupt, except for illness, disability, military deployment, or travel. If you're in the military, you're far away, absolutely. If you have to go someplace, absolutely.
In June, District Court Judge Indira Talwani ruled parts of the order exceeded the president's authority and blocked its enforcement in those jurisdictions. On July 25th, the U.S. Court of Appeals for the First Circuit upheld that decision, saying that if the order took effect before the September and November elections, it could sow confusion and threaten disenfranchisement of many eligible voters. The executive order directs the Secretary of Homeland Security to provide federal citizenship lists to state officials to help determine voter eligibility. It also directs the U.S. Postal Service to deliver mail ballots only to voters on those lists and calls for secure envelopes with unique barcodes for tracking. Federal funding could be withheld from states and localities that do not comply. President Trump addressing secure elections yesterday while speaking to auto workers at a General Motors facility outside of Detroit.
We will pass the Save America Act through the Senate, hopefully the Senate. Call your senators and put pressure on them. We won't get one Democrat senator to get you voter ID with photo. Need a photo.
The president mentioning the recent case in New Jersey where over 6,000 illegal immigrants were registered to vote.
And that's all over the country. That's nothing compared to what's going on in California and Minnesota and so many other states.
Returning to President Trump's request to the Supreme Court, the administration argues the lower court's decision was premature and could delay election security measures before November. Solicitor General D. John Sauer is asking justices to lift the injunction while the legal challenge continues. The states challenging the order, led by California, have until August 3rd to respond to the administration's appeal. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
Calls are mounting on Capitol Hill for senators to skip August recess to hold a prolonged debate on the Save America Act. President Trump weighs in as the Senate leader pushes back. NTD's Melina Weisskopf reports.
Several senators are joining in a push to skip their weeks-long recess to debate the Save America Act.
6 months now. We'll turn back to the Save America Act when we've got time, if we've got time. And then as we get closer and closer to August, the message is turning to, oh, we'd love to, but can't because we're out of time.
Senator Lee is leading an effort to vote against starting the August recess at the end of this week. Several Republicans have chimed in with support, while some are doubling down on opposition. Senator John Cornyn telling reporters that the Utah Republican is demoralizing our base of voters.
And if that's now the standard that we all just have to agree anytime there's a planned recess that we're going to take it, and that anyone who suggests that we even have a vote on that is wrong, that is crazy.
Lee has pushed for months to hold a so-called talking filibuster, a push that would give Republicans the chance to wear down Democrats through prolonged debate. Senate Leader John Thune saying it's not a one-way street.
But you turn control of the floor over to the Democrats. It's not only unlimited debate, it's unlimited amendments. And the Democrats will have a long list of amendments.
The president on Monday doubling down on the need to pass the act, which would require proof of citizenship to register to vote and voter ID at the polls.
You read recently in New Jersey where tremendous numbers of people were found out that they were on the voter rolls totally illegally, and that's all over the country. That's nothing compared to what's going on in California and Minnesota and so many other states.
He's once again calling on senators to eliminate the filibuster.
It's fine. I have a good relationship with John Thune. He's just got to get his job done. You got to get the Save America Act passed. Or better than that would be the filibuster. If you terminate the filibuster, everything happens.
Several Republican senators say they're unwilling to end the filibuster. Republicans are currently working on a party line approach to approve some elements of the Save America Act through a grant program. It would incentivize states to adopt proof of citizenship and voter ID. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Melina Weisskopf, NTD News.
Newly declassified documents show the Chinese regime sought to influence the 2020 presidential election. Acting Director of National Intelligence Bill Pulte releasing the files today. Declassified government records say that China tried to utilize cyber operations to sway public opinion against the Trump administration ahead of the 2020 elections. The operations were designed to exploit U.S. social fissures, especially racial tensions and partisan disagreements. The file goes on to say that the Chinese regime resorted to social media, including TikTok, Facebook, and Twitter, to project these tensions. Another declassified file is from the National Intelligence Council in January 2020. It reads, quote, "We judge that U.S. adversaries, including at a minimum Russia, China, Iran, and North Korea, as well as non-state groups, have the capability to compromise U.S. election infrastructure for the 2020 presidential election." The release of the documents comes amid President Trump's push for stricter election rules. The acting director of national intelligence also announcing today that he has cut 30% of the workforce of the intelligence community. He calls this the fifth and near final round of terminations. Pulte says, quote, The intelligence community must protect the American people, not the political whims of the bloated and corrupt elite class. And former President Biden's audio recordings with his ghostwriter are made public. They're part of the Justice Department's classified documents case. What the audio tapes show after this break. Stay tuned.
Tired of struggling with that heavy leaf blower? Introducing the Bullseye Power Blower. It delivers a massive blowing force, and yet it's so compact and lightweight. Just lock and load the rechargeable battery for long-lasting runtime. The secret is the compact turbocharged motor with jet burst technology that blasts out 21,000 RPMs of airflow. Watch this. The sheer force propels this woman across the pool. Look, use Bullseye to blow up a huge jump house. Now that's power. Even blows snow right off your vehicle in no time. Turbo clean your porch in a flash or tidy up your dirty garage floor in seconds. Get it today for just $99.99. But wait, act now and get a $20 discount. So it's only $79.99. Plus, you'll get the adjustable extension tube, yours free. And it all comes with free shipping. Order now.
Call 1-800-209-2313 or go to bullseyeblower.com. That's 1-800-209-2313 or order online at bullseyeblower.com. Order now.
Hi, I'm Jane Seymour, and I spent years on TV playing a doctor. But I learned about the heartbreaking reality of heart disease and stroke when they touched my own life. My father nearly died before having a quadruple bypass and valve replacement that saved him. And my mom, who was my inspiration, suffered a stroke that took away her speech, her ability to move, and ultimately her life. To see someone so vibrant, so positive, who'd survived so much in life, be debilitated by a stroke, it was devastating, and also a wake-up call. And that's why I'm so passionate about supporting the American Heart Association. They're doing more every day to stop needless deaths. But they simply can't do their life-saving work without you. So please call now or go to helpheart.org. And for only $19 a month, just 63 cents a day, your donation will go to work to do amazing things, like fund the next medical breakthrough, get the next person trained in CPR, and the next hospital certified in high-quality cardiovascular care. I hope that you'll open your heart right now and join me. Please call now or go to helpheart.org, give $19 a month, and we'll send you this special t-shirt that you can proudly wear to show that you're part of a community of monthly donors who are helping save lives. A healthy heart is the spirit of life. It makes it possible to do the things that you love, to spend time with your friends and family and fulfill your life's dreams. But so many won't have that chance. Heart disease is America's #1 killer and the #1 killer of women. And that's why I'll do whatever I can to make sure others don't die from heart disease before their time. So please join me. Call the number on your screen or go to helpheart.org and help save even more lives. Thank you.
Former President Biden's audio recordings with his ghostwriter are public now for the first time. They appear to show Biden keeping classified documents at home and struggling with memory loss. The recordings date from 2016 and 2017, when Biden and his ghostwriter, Mark Zwinitzer, worked on his memoir in his home. The Department of Justice obtained the recordings during its 2023 investigation into Biden's handling of classified information, but they weren't released until this week. In 2 of the recordings, Biden could be heard saying he has some classified documents at home. Other recordings, Biden seemed to have difficulty remembering things. One audio tape shows him struggling to recall the names of 2 economic advisors. In another tape, he struggled to recall a memorial he attended for a fallen service member. The Justice Department concluded its probe into Biden in 2024. It found that the former president had willfully retained classified materials, but the department chose not to pursue criminal charges, citing Biden's diminished mental faculties. The Department of Education is escalating its enforcement of parental rights schools and policies with new actions against districts in Maryland and Michigan, following earlier federal findings involving school districts in Kansas. NTD's Arlene Richards has the details.
The Trump administration is stepping up its fight with school districts over parental rights, announcing on Monday new federal action against districts in Maryland and Michigan.
And this is a travesty that parents are not considered first and foremost in charge of their children. They don't belong to the government. They belong to their children.
The Education Department says the districts failed to provide parents with information about their children's gender identity and classifying gender identity as confidential medical information. The policy is raising concerns about federal student privacy laws and parental rights.
This is really outrageous, and to hide it from parents and actually create separate file folders so that when parents ask to see their children's records, it is being kept from them, and it's being done on purpose. And so we're just not going to stand for it.
The move follows similar federal action in other states. In April, the Education Department announced that it had found 4 Kansas school districts had violated federal law. The department's findings in Kansas involved policies allowing schools to conceal from parents whether their children are using different pronouns, going by different names, or even having different names printed on their diplomas. Those districts were required to eliminate policies that were based on gender identity rather than biological sex and make records involving gender identity available to parents. McMahon said parents have the right to determine what their children's education exposure is going to be, and the Trump administration is going to enforce it. Arlene Richards, NTD News.
Brian Koberger, the man convicted of killing 4 University of Idaho students in 2022, wants to take back his guilty plea and go to trial. That's according to the comments he made to the New York Times in an interview from prison. Koberger filed a post-conviction relief form in Idaho courts yesterday. He blamed his plea on false promises and wrong information. He was convicted last year after pleading guilty in open court and admitting to the murders. He was sentenced to life without parole. A shooting in Seattle over the weekend left 3 people dead and 4 others wounded. Seattle Police Chief Sean Barnes provided an update on the investigation this afternoon.
We've been poring over evidence that we have recovered, and we're not slowing down. This includes video, physical evidence, photos, witness and victim statements. We have dozens of pieces of digital evidence to review and are continuing to review that information as well as searching the area for more. Since Sunday night, we have received more than 80 calls to our SPD tip line, which is absolutely incredible. If you know anything, please call our tip line at 206-233-5000, 206-233-5000. At this point, we have interviewed all survivors and multiple witnesses, and will continue to do so in the upcoming days.
The shots rang out Sunday at a food festival in downtown Seattle. Barnes said 3 guns were recovered, including an untraceable homemade firearm commonly referred to as a ghost gun. Seattle police said at least 3 individuals were involved in the shooting near the city's Space Needle. One of the suspects was among those killed. A 15-year-old suspect is in custody while another remains at large. Seattle Mayor Katie Wilson added that police are working to determine if there are additional suspects. And the nation's capital remembering the late Senator Lindsey Graham today. President Trump and other officials honoring his legacy of humor and bipartisanship. Let's go now live to NTD's Washington, D.C. reporter Fiona G. on the ground outside the Capitol. Fiona, good to see you. Good afternoon. Tell us more.
Don, great to see you too. Right, I'm here right outside the Washington National Cathedral, where the funeral for the late Senator Lindsey Graham has just come to a conclusion. President Trump was in attendance, as well as a slew of other officials, including Vice President J.D. Vance, the president's cabinet, as well as Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. President Donald Trump spoke during the funeral. Here he is reminiscing about the late senator's career. Take a look.
Lindsey first stormed into Washington with the Republican Revolution of 1994, becoming the first Republican to win his House district in 120 years. That was Lindsey. In 2002, he ran for the Senate in what should have been a loss, and he swept to an easy victory. Lindsey quickly became a master at maneuvering in one of the world's great legislative bodies. He secured record funding for our military as a budget committee chairman. He delivered the largest investment in border security in history, and last year he shepherded the passage of the largest tax cuts in American history, the great, big, beautiful bill.
So there's the president listing just some of the accomplishments during Senator Lindsey Graham's 30-something odd years on Capitol Hill. But Senator Lindsey Graham was no stranger to personal hardship. He lost both of his parents within a 15-month span when he was in his very early 20s, leaving him to adopt and raise his younger sister, Darlene Graham, on his own. But he never let any of that hardship get in the way of his goals. He was actually the first person in his family to attend college. Out of college, he actually started serving in the Air Force. And this is something that a lot of people don't know, but he was a member of the military for 33 years. In 1995, he was elected as a representative for his home state of South Carolina, and he came here onto Capitol Hill. He served as a representative until 2003, when he then won the election to become a senator for South Carolina. And during this period of time, while he was serving on Capitol Hill, he was serving in the military in the Air Force Reserve at the same time. Here's President Trump at the funeral calling Senator Lindsey Graham a tough cookie.
But no matter how heated things got in Washington, virtually everyone, Republican or Democrat, liked Lindsey. Well, not everybody, but it sounds good. Not everybody. He was a tough cookie, okay? I have to veer from this for a second. He was a tough cookie, Darlene, but he was beautiful.
And there's the president bringing some humor into the funeral service, which I'm sure that the late senator would have appreciated, because that's actually a theme we've been seeing throughout these remembrances for the late senator. Many people have brought up the fact that Senator Graham had a great sense of humor. We heard that from the vice president earlier today. We heard that from Senate Majority Leader John Thune as well. All of them talking about how hard Senator Graham made them laugh all the time. J.D. Vance, the vice president, actually sharing one time where he was about to make a campaign speech, but right before he went on, Senator Graham made him laugh so hard his stomach ached and he had a hard time getting through that speech. But apart from humor, Senator Graham is known for his bipartisanship, his ability to stand firm in whatever beliefs he believes are right and best for American people without worrying too much about party lines. We heard Justice Elena Kagan bring this up a few days ago when she was remembering the late senator, mentioning a moment during her confirmation hearing back in 2010 when the senator, amidst all this very intense questioning, asked Kagan, what did you do for Christmas? And that really broke the tension for a little bit, got everyone laughing, and he was actually one of the few Republicans who ended up voting to confirm that justice. He was also chair of the Senate Budget Committee, and before that he was chair of the Senate Judiciary Committee between 2019 and 2021. Now, when it comes to policy, Senator Graham was a very big supporter of Ukraine and Israel. And you can see that in the fact that the leaders of both of those countries came to his funeral today. And in fact, tonight, the Senate is scheduled to hold a procedural vote for the Lindsey O. Graham Sanctioning Russia and Iran Act of 2026, which was named in honor of the senator. Now, we also heard from the senator's niece during the funeral, who brought in a much more personal aspect to the senator's life, telling stories about how no matter how busy the senator got, even if he was on a way to a very important meeting on Capitol Hill, if a family member called, he was always there to pick up the phone and make sure everything was all right. And earlier today on Capitol Hill in the Capitol Rotunda, Vice President J.D. Vance did a good job of summarizing the late senator's legacy. Watch.
So I choose to remember Lindsey Graham as a man who could disagree with you without being disagreeable. I choose to remember Lindsey Graham as a person who could fight with you on one issue, but fight for you on another issue. I remember Lindsey Graham as a man who loved people. And because he loved people, he was willing to reason with them, to respect them, and ultimately to persuade them.
And to the vice president's point there, Senator Lindsey Graham was known to really care about serving his constituents. Now today, the funeral services here in Washington, D.C. have concluded, and now Senator Lindsey Graham will be flown back to his home state of South Carolina for another funeral service tomorrow before being laid to rest. Don, back to you.
All right, Fiona, thank you for the report. Dr. Anthony Fauci's private COVID-era diaries are raising new questions before his Senate testimony. We have more news after this break. Don't go away.
My mom and dad were traditional Asian parents.
Now my father would go to work before I woke up in the morning, and then he would come home too tired to play with me. I tell my son, I love you every single day. Now my dad has never said that to me. Not because he doesn't love me, but because culturally it wasn't comfortable for him. So I teased him the other day and I said, how come you never say that to me? And he said, you're too old now. Now that he's a grandfather, he says, I love you to my son every time he sees him. My advice to all the fathers out there, forget the material things, forget the cultural restrictions. They grow up way too fast for you to waste even a single precious minute or moment.
Say bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Every day, thousands of kids start vaping. And I can't let this happen to my kid. Of course, it's awkward to talk to your kids about the dangers of vaping. Hey, bestie, how's sketches, ready? It's hard to get their attention. Ready? Go. Yes, look at that. You even turn yours over. So if you want to talk to your kids about the dangers of vaping, you have to get it trending. Right, backpack kid?
Let's do it.
First, invite your kid to do the vape talk. Let's try this. All right.
Why is he here?
Yeah, I gotta get it trending, honey.
Come on. To the left. To the right. Let's go.
Oh, honey, can we talk?
Yeah, what's up?
I see a lot of your friends vaping.
Visit talkaboutvaping.org for tips on when and how to have the vape talk.
Dr. Anthony Fauci is set to testify tomorrow before the Senate Homeland Security Committee. He was subpoenaed by Senator Rand Paul. This comes as Fauci's private COVID-era diaries continue to draw scrutiny. Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. says the diaries were found across 11 separate government servers. Speaking on Fox News.
The worst part is that giddy narcissism that you see throughout the diary is juxtaposed against really bad public health decisions. So his focus was on self-promotion, clearly, and nobody can read these diaries and say this is a political response. His focus was on promoting himself, on getting on TV, and not doing public health.
Kennedy says the diaries reveal significant differences between Fauci's private assessments and his public statements on the origins of COVID-19 and pandemic policies. The documents have been turned over to Senators Rand Paul and Ron Johnson as part of their ongoing investigation into the government's COVID-19 response. Paul says any false statements made under oath during Wednesday's testimony would not be covered by Fauci's preemptive presidential pardon. The diaries also include references to meetings with high-profile actors and comedians. In one entry dated May 21st, 2020, Fauci wrote that he was the most famous and talked about person in the country and one of the most recognizable people in the world. Dr. Fauci has not responded to requests for comment. Here's President Trump on Fox News this morning commenting on Fauci and the COVID-19 response.
Had I taken his advice, the whole country would have been closed down, and much of the country was open because I didn't close it down. What I did do, though, is with Operation Warp Speed, is we got things done that nobody's ever seen in terms of all of the gear necessary, and we learned that the cupboards were bare. You know, when I took over, we had none of this. We didn't have the ventilators.
I know.
We didn't have anything. We ended up becoming the #1 ventilator producer, and we were supplying ventilators to other countries by the time we got going. And we did a great job. No, but I was not a believer because he said everybody has to wear a mask. Then he said don't wear a mask. You remember it was a whole thing. Wear them, don't wear them. I said, what are you doing? He started off saying don't wear them. Then he said wear them. Then he said don't wear them. And I lost a lot of respect for him during the period of time. Right. But I inherited him. He's been there since the 1980s. I mean, he was a guy that was there that I inherited. And with time, I didn't mind him. I didn't find him to be bad, you know, personally as a person. But I didn't agree with what he was saying
Sure,
or what he was doing. And when Biden came in, he inherited him, and he gave him a tremendously high position. And then he gave him a pardon.
The Trump administration is ending federal support for dangerous gain-of-function research, both in the United States and abroad. A new government-wide policy released today bars taxpayer funding for gain-of-function research and requires independent review of other high-risk life sciences research. It also cuts off money to countries and institutions the administration says don't meet U.S. biosafety standards. HHS Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. says the government has a duty to protect Americans, not fund research that could put them at risk, and to replace weak oversight with clear, enforceable safeguards. Dr. Anthony Fauci's private journal entries from roughly December 2019 through 2022 were released. Joining us now to discuss is Jennifer Ghilardi, Senior Policy Analyst for Restoring American Wellness at the Heritage Foundation. So Jennifer, good afternoon to you. Thank you for being here today. So apparently some of the text shows he had influence in persuading people like New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio, California officials toward school closures. But, you know, Fauci's later public statements denied he recommended lockdowns. Just give us your overall thoughts here. What stood out to you the most in the diary entries?
Well, I think the most important thing, and thank you for having me on today, the most important thing are the facts that he knew this does not come from a wet market. He said only 2 people out of the 12 scientists consulted believe that, and that he went out in public with the complete opposite to, you know, kind of cover his tracks for the gain of function research that was illegal in the United States, that he sent money for through Peter Daszak and the Eco Health Alliance. So I think that's the most nefarious part of it. The rest of it, though, is just kind of laughable and embarrassing and just really shows what a snake in the grass this guy is. He is the epitome of failing upward. Ever since his AIDS response, his response with Ebola, which was all just a show, he put on this, like, I don't know if you've seen, he put on this kind of biomedical suit, like hazmat suit, just for a photo op with an Ebola. She was at the time called Nurse Number 1. He is a showman, and he has made a mockery of the institutions that people once trusted. The idea that he said, you know, oh, I'm not responsible for the school closures. And I think he really believes that because all he really wanted was the attention from people in power. He wanted the attention from Mayor de Blasio. He wanted the attention of Gavin Newsom. I mean, we see that throughout these writings, that he's very juvenile. He's very immature. You know, in Los Angeles, we had names for people like these. They were called Star, not a very nice name, rhymes with pluckers, but like he just wants attention. And I just think that comes from a deep sense of insecurity because he actually doesn't have that great of credentials.
Yeah, speaking of him wanting attention, I mean, it looked like from the writings, it seems like Fauci was really enjoying his fame at the time because he wrote things like, and this is a quote, by the way, it's not hyperbole to say that today I am the most famous and talked about person in the country and one of the most recognizable persons in the world. And it seems like he said it was very flattering. Maybe just give us your reactions to this.
I mean, the lack of hubris, or the total hubris, sorry, not the lack of humility and the total hubris of kind of the heads of research institutions is what we're dealing with across the board. I mean, Fauci isn't the only one. Francis Collins is another one. They shouldn't be in these positions. They're not serious people. And you know, I don't go around like writing in my diary, I was on NTD News today. Oh my goodness, it's part of my job. It's what I do. I don't really get like my sense of self-worth from this. So I think it was great that we cleaned house with the Trump administration. Admittedly, some of them already were in the public eye, but they're really getting down to brass tacks. And unfortunately, the media focuses kind of on Kennedy's little bit of his name and his pre-celebrity, but Jay Bhattacharya, Marty McCary, Marty Koldorf, some of these guys are hardcore scientists. And I'm glad that they're the ones in the position of power now to do the work and to not just be going after the media hits and the clicks. it just kind of made a mockery of our institutions. It's going to take a while to build that trust back, I think, with the American public. So
And
Fauci did some real damage.
right, sure. And talking about the school closures, I mean, technically speaking, sure, Fauci didn't have the legal authority to order lockdowns, but his recommendations had a lot of influence. So I mean, the question is, I mean, how much responsibility, because of his influence, was actually responsible for these lockdowns that were quite widespread?
Well, I mean, you saw what the media did with him. He was on every single news show. He was on CNN and MS Now and every single news show that was pushing these ideas. So sure, he may not have had legal authority, and it doesn't matter because once that's disseminated out to the public, that's what they're listening to. I knew legally, by the way, that my job couldn't mandate that I take a vaccine. But that's not what people listen to, right? They listen to the sound bites. They listen to the mainstream media, particularly older generations where this really affected them. And so they're listening to the bad advice. And so, no, was he legally responsible for them? No, but you have to take some sort of accountability when you are a public official, where you're in the public eye. It's just like anything. You monitor your behavior a little bit more. And you be as truthful as you can. That was not his MO. His MO was he, himself, and he.
What did you think about the situation on face mask? Because before he came on, we played the soundbite of President Trump talking on Fox News, saying that he was for face mask, and then he wasn't, and then he was going back and forth. What did you think about that whole situation?
Well, that whole back and forth, the whole shifting, just kind of proves that there was no scientific basis for any of these rules, so-called rules, any of these so-called regulations, any of these suggestions, really, is what they were. But, again, businesses bought into it. Everybody required it. You were getting, like, if you didn't have your mask on in the store, you would get yelled at. I mean, the public shaming is really how we change people's behavior, sometimes for the better. Maybe when it comes to things like obesity, but sometimes for just ridiculous things like this. So there was no scientific backing. He admitted as much with the 6 feet apart rule. And yet you had these signs on the floors, 6 feet apart in schools and everything. So, I mean, the damage that masks did to children, their developmental skills, their speaking skills, speech, it just made everybody afraid. And then that's the other thing. It just kind of inculcated this ethos of fear in everybody, and everybody was scared of each other. And that's how you control people.
And I really found it funny that sometimes Fauci would wear two masks, right? One double masking. I just found that a little humorous. But anyway, let's end on this. Fauci is going to be at a hearing tomorrow on Capitol Hill. What do you want for the biggest answers? What are the biggest things you want answers on tomorrow?
I mean, I would love for him just to admit it's not going to happen. It doesn't matter what I love, I think, because what I would love, I think the most we can expect is that the people that have been doubtful of Rand Paul and saying, why are you continuing to go after this guy? This guy is a hero. That narrative is so ingrained in people's minds that he is not only a national hero, but a global hero. Like when you're presented with the truth and you don't change your mind, that's very frustrating. So I do hope people will see the truth about this guy. People have been sounding the alarm about him, like I mentioned, since the AIDS crisis, that he's just been in it for himself, for his own monetary and public profile gain. And I'm not really sure what's going to come of it. Unfortunately, too, DC and kind of these congressional hearings have become Hollywoodish. It's our new entertainment. I don't think that's very healthy for Americans. It's good that we have transparency, like we're watching things that go on in DC, but with that has come this kind of political theater that I don't think is helpful. I think it increases division, but this is where we are. And at the very least, I hope, people will see this for what it is. And maybe more people pushing for accountability will eventually lead to it, again, because of his pardon. I'm not a lawyer. I don't know the legal terms of it and what actually he can be held accountable for and what will happen. But it's kind of like a wait and see thing.
Yeah, I agree with you. It shouldn't be the situation, but I do expect tomorrow that there will be some interesting moments, some entertaining moments. We'll see what happens. Jennifer, it's been great to speak with you today. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
A magnitude 7.1 earthquake hits southern Japan. Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi is urging residents in Kumamoto Prefecture to evacuate.
To those in areas that experienced strong shaking, the risk of building collapses and landslides remains high. Please avoid entering dangerous areas and take all precautions to ensure your safety. Over the next week or so, please remain alert for the possibility of earthquakes with a maximum seismic intensity of 7.
Local media reported that dozens of people have been injured. The earthquake also knocked out power to thousands of homes and damaged roads. Some are trapped inside a partially collapsed shopping mall. Authorities have instructed roughly 300,000 residents to head to evacuation centers. Takaichi added that military personnel have been deployed to assist with rescue operations. Aftershocks continue in the region about 540 miles southwest of Tokyo. We'll have more as this story develops. Wildfires continue affecting over 250,000 people in Spain and France. Forests are extremely dry due to these 3 heat waves hitting the region so far this summer, and a 4th wave is starting today. NTD's international correspondent Arian Pastar has the latest.
New body cam footage on Tuesday shows French crews battling a wildfire in a forest near Bordeaux. The area near the city is covered by pine forests, which become highly flammable when dry. Drone footage shows the scale of the fire, with smoke covering huge areas. Temperatures on Tuesday are above 90 degrees Fahrenheit, as the 4th heat wave of this summer is starting. They're expected to hit 100 degrees later this week. Over 200,000 people had to be evacuated so far. Some are now staying in makeshift shelters.
I'm surprised, but pleasantly so, because I feel we've been extremely well looked after. We've been welcomed and supported in absolutely every area where we might need help.
A separate fire is also ripping through neighboring Spain, burning down the homes of some residents.
Practically everything here was burning. It was very sad watching the cameras and seeing your house burn down, because this is my home, after all.
The fire, which is burning near the capital city of Madrid, is affecting villages in the forests. Firefighters are racing to contain it before the 4th heat wave of this summer starts to really kick in. The Spanish government is giving tax breaks and other benefits to the communities hit by the fire, so they can focus on helping the residents. Arian Pastar, NTD News.
Malaysian police have raided more than 24 locations hosting online scam schemes. Authorities arrested over 300 suspects and seized around $245,000. The Johor police chief said the July 15th operation targeted 2 areas identified as hubs for call centers running online fraud activities. The suspects arrested were between 20 and 58 years old. They included 309 Chinese nationals, 19 Indonesians, 3 Malaysians, and 4 suspects from Myanmar. Officers also seized nearly 1,900 electronic devices used to execute multi-million-dollar romance and crypto scams. Authorities said the scams targeted victims in China, Indonesia, Japan, Europe, and the United States. And South Korean officials briefly ordered residents to evacuate today. The move followed a reported white phosphorus leak at a U.S. military base near Seoul. Authorities urged people living near Osan Air Base to move to safety and avoid skin exposure after the leak was detected. The evacuation order was lifted hours later after officials said decontamination work was completed. The U.S. Air Force said it established a safety cordon following a ground mishap, but did not confirm a white phosphorus leak. No major disruptions or injuries were reported. Severe weather in the parts of the Midwest. A tornado in eastern Wisconsin leaves a trail of damage after tearing through several communities. Severe thunderstorms with damaging winds hit other parts of the region as well. Here are the details.
The house started shaking and I was like, oh, this is really serious. So yeah, I broke down because, I was just alone.
A Wisconsin resident recounting the terrifying moments a tornado ripped through her town on Monday.
I know I had to get in the basement, but I was hiding in a small room where we put our shoes. That's when I started praying, and I'm glad God heard my prayer to protect my mom.
The devastating twister ripped through parts of Menasha and Appleton, Wisconsin, damaging homes, uprooting trees, and knocking out power for thousands of customers. In the aftermath, communities are pulling together.
The neighbors are really good about everything. It's a nice cohesive group. Here, people stepped in to do what they could do.
Neighbors helping neighbors, working together as their communities recover.
We had a tornado. That's not important. This stuff right here, all these people coming together, that's what's important.
Severe weather hit other parts of the Midwest too, including Illinois. In Chicago, heavy rain caused flooding. Video showed cars stuck in high water, drivers forced to leave their vehicles behind.
The water just started rising all of a sudden, and there was no going back because there was a lot of cars behind me.
The first round of storms in Chicago hit so suddenly that 2 contractors got trapped in a storm sewer. As of Monday night, crews had managed to rescue one of the workers.
Keiko Fujimori is being sworn in as Peru's first elected female president, marking another shift toward conservative leadership in Latin America. Fujimori's victory comes as voters across the region express frustration over rising crime, political instability, and economic challenges. Fujimori is the daughter of former President Alberto Fujimori. She returns one of Peru's most influential political families to power after years of failed campaigns. Fujimori has signaled closer cooperation with President Trump's administration, including interest in joining a U.S.-backed initiative targeting transnational crime. Washington is also seeking stronger ties with Peru, a key producer of copper and critical minerals. Peru is also a strategic partner in countering China's regional influence. Incredible survival stories from a daring ocean rescue to an emergency landing and a month-long ordeal at sea. We have more news after this break. Don't go away.
Hi, I'm Kirk Kaiser, and did you know the average funeral costs around $10,000? And if you don't have enough insurance to cover funeral costs, credit card debt, and other expenses, your family is going to get stuck with the bill. Don't let that happen. Call right now. And if you're over 50, you can get up to $30,000 in affordable life insurance, and your acceptance is guaranteed. That's right. If you're over 50, you can't be turned down for this insurance, regardless of your health. Plus, there's no medical exam and no health questions. Your rate will never go up. Your coverage will never go down. And rates start as low as $5 a week. Your coverage begins as soon as your application is received. Don't wait until it's too late. Call right now.
Call 800-813-4551. That's 800-813-4551.
An important message for Americans ages 50 to 85.
You seen that life insurance thing I got in the mail?
From Colonial Penn?
Yeah, that's it.
It's over there.
The recycle bin. I sent for this.
You're buying life insurance now? Have you been to the grocery store lately? The last thing we need is another bill.
That's exactly why we need life insurance. If something happens to either of us, those bills won't go away. Life insurance can help pay them. Funeral costs, too. Take a look at this. It costs pennies a day.
That's right. Rates for Colonial Penn Life Insurance start at $9.95 a month. That's 35 cents a day. And this is one bill you know will never go up. A lifetime rate lock guarantees it. Your rate is guaranteed, and so is your acceptance. That makes applying quick and easy. There are no medical questions, no physical exam. Since you can't be turned down, we don't ask about your health. And this is lifetime coverage. It never expires. Just pay your bill, and it's yours to keep for as long as you'd like.
This is the application. There's nothing to it. No health questions. What's this?
Free beneficiary planner. When we fill it out, all our important information and final wishes will be in one place.
The kids will appreciate that.
Call for more information and your free gift today. Read how easy it is to get life insurance from Colonial Penn, even if you have pre-existing conditions or fixed income. It's easy and risk-free. Every policy we issue comes with a 30-day money-back guarantee. Call now to learn more. You have nothing to lose.
Call 1-800-293-7575 for free information and a free beneficiary planner. That's 1-800-293-7575. There's no risk or obligation. 1-800-293-7575. Call now.
Apple is launching a new program that would allow customers to lease some of its products without buying them. The plan would replace Apple's current iPhone upgrade program, which allowed customers to swap out iPhones for a newer version after making 12 monthly payments. The new leasing offer applies to the iPhone 17 and Air models starting at $18 a month, as well as the Apple Watch Series 11 and Ultra 3. Customers would be able to lease those products for either 12 or 24 months. Macs and iPads will have a 24 to 36-month lease term. Leasing options are available at retail stores, online, and in the Apple App Store. The store moves at a time when electronics are getting more expensive and consumers are holding onto their devices longer. It's also ahead of Apple's new iPhone launch in September that's expected to include its first foldable iPhone, Apple's most expensive iPhone yet. A photographer captured a harrowing and heroic rescue by a teenage lifeguard on a Southern California beach that he said was the most intense he'd ever witnessed. Here's what happened.
Watch a heroic teenage lifeguard rescue a 10-year-old swimmer from monster waves in Southern California. Video of the save was captured on a beach in Santa Cruz as huge waves battered the 16-year-old as he tried to bring in the boy. According to KSBW, several bystanders attempted to help, but were also batted back by the intense crashing surf. Eventually, another lifeguard assisted, and the swimmer was brought safely to the beach. The boy was evaluated by paramedics and released to his parents, according to the photographer who captured the stunning save. He said he hopes others will learn from it.
I've never seen a rescue this intense before. We want to see people come out, have a good time, enjoy the weather, but get home safely.
Safely on the beach is how and where a pilot made an unexpected landing in Huntington Beach, California. KCAL reports the small plane had just taken off when the pilot says things went sideways.
We were in the process of just talking with LA Approach, and then the engine quit, and I got out a call. I just called Mayday, Mayday, Mayday.
The local beach provided a soft and secure spot for the impromptu landing, which eyewitnesses described as perfect. Finally, a happy ending to a dire situation near Hawaii, where KGMB reports a California man was rescued after being stuck adrift at sea for a month. The man was attempting a solo trip across the Pacific when his boat's mast snapped and he ran out of gas. He said he drifted for weeks, surviving on oatmeal and fish until he was spotted by a passing ship's crew who brought him aboard and gave him clothes, food, and a ride back to land.
And just an extra note here to the heroic rescue of the lifeguard. President Trump says he plans to invite the teenage lifeguard and his family to the White House, possibly along with the 10-year-old boy who was rescued. In a Truth Social post, Trump praised the lifeguard's bravery and said he deserves a high civilian honor. And thank you for watching NTD Newsroom. I'm Don Ma. Let's take a quick break now. We'll be back with more. And remember, NTD Evening News is at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific.